What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone's having a fantastic evening, fantastic afternoon, fantastic pre-noon, no matter where you are in the world. I'm Hassan Piker, and this is the Hasanabi broadcast coming to you live from hazy but clear California, Los Angeles. Folks, we're live and alive, and I hope all the boys, girls, and MBs are having a fantastic one because today's a beautiful day. Today is a wonderful day. Today is Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Sunday, not so fun day today. It's December 8th, 2024, and I am actually early for Sunday, but on time for other days. This is a part of the broadcast where I tell you about my personal news. Well, it's Sunday, but there's so much news to cover, so we'll do some fun day stuff as well, but not like we'll do some fun day stuff as well, but not full-blown Sunday fun day as we normally would, because obviously there's a lot going on. Folks, personal news. I'm in a cozy ass fit, and that's because I'm hungover. This is a unique hungover stream, which is not something that you normally get from me because I normally don't drink. But I did drink last night at the Streamer Awards. The drama, the glitz, the glam, the glory, and the losses. But yeah. Personal news wise, yesterday we did the Drip or Drown stream. I covered a little bit of the United Healthcare CEO Assassin. Then I was going to talk a little bit about Syria as well, but we, there wasn't too much that I had, there wasn't too much time that I had because we had the Streamer Awards, but the Streamer Awards was happening last night. So we, of course, needed to go and get some fits. And that's precisely what we did. And then after I ended the stream, we went to the Streamer Awards. And basically, we got dominated. The entire Fear and crew got dominated. You know, it is what it is. But at least the fit was good. Did you skip the interviews of the awards? No, I did. I did do the red carpet. But I don't know where it was posted. I don't know if it was actually posted on the live stream or not, because I was in a haze. The reason why I was in a haze is because I was drinking. I started drinking before we got to the Streamer Awards. Me and Will decided, fuck it, let's just go crazy. Let's just go nutty mode. And I had some grogs in my fridge that they had sent me. So we slammed some fucking grogs. I had a couple tequila shots too. And, all hell broke loose at that point. I was cracking jokes with the Uber driver about the United Healthcare. Like I was trying to see where he was coming from, like what his opinion was on the United Healthcare CEO hit. And he seemingly loved it. The Uber driver was like so on board with it. It was funny. Wait, what? If we care about anti-Semitism, and I know we do, we need to stay away from Bassem Youssef. Please don't give more ammunition by having a genuinely anti-Semitic person on stream. He parrots conspiracies about Jewish media control and the libel against Leo Frank. Wait, what? Really? Bassem Youssef is like a liberal, dude. I thought Bassem... What? I am completely unaware of this if he's done stuff like that. I didn't personally like how much he was like joking around with Dan Bilzerian, who I do think is like an actual anti-Semite. But I don't think Bassem Youssef is I'd be shocked. Yeah, I think like the shit that he does, the shit that he on Theo Von, he talked about Jews owning the media, and then on Twitter about Leo Frank stuff. Wait, what the fuck? I did not know this at all, chatter. Holy shit. He retweeted one thing that was bad. What is this? After a Leo Frank rant that recycled anti-Semitic tropes and sounded almost like Candace Owens, who's gone deep into the anti-Semitic territory. I hope that Mehdi Hassan is the tail remove Bassem Youssef from a list of affiliated contributors. What is this? Tomorrow marks 109 years since Leo Frank was lynched by a hate-filled mob in Georgia. Wait, I don't know. I don't know enough about this. I don't know. I have no idea what the fuck this is. Isn't this like the inception of the Leo Frank lynch mob story? Judge for yourself. Playing a little close. He's playing a little fast and loose there for my taste, but I think he's just trying to be a comedian. But I do think that This is bullshit. I don't agree with this at all. I don't agree with Theo Von saying that. And I've heard Theo Von say this before, and I have criticized it as well. I think this is like super fucking old school. It's probably one of the most like insidious forms of it too. And I think this, like, whether intentionally or unintentionally, doesn't matter, absolutely fucking leans into. Norm Finkelstein said this also. Yeah, well, Norm Finkelstein is literally the son of Holocaust survivors, and he is, a Jewish man. It's also my position. My position on this has always been, one, Jews are not fucking monolithic. Okay, like, it doesn't matter. This is the idea that, like, there are Jewish people in fucking media, and that therefore this somehow feeds into, the pro-Israel position is so fucking ridiculous. Especially because guess who I have on my fucking show all the time? Jews in media. Okay, the fuck? Some of the most, like, aggressive anti-Zionists out there are the very same Jewish people that work in media that I have on my stream. It's ridiculous. I don't think that this is, like, appropriate. I don't agree with it. I don't like this at all. Yeah, this is way too fucking close to, like, it's way too close to the fucking it's just like he's talking about dual loyalty and shit. Like, this is not something that I've ever personally agreed with. I don't give it any fucking room to breathe whatsoever, and I think it's a very dangerous. The Jews that occupy leadership positions in media have those jobs because they're right-wing capitalists, not because they're Jewish. Exactly. Let's bring back my favorite anti-Semite destroyer. Okay, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, who talks very famously about the enmity caused against Jews in Tsarist Russia. His speech is important to remember because it is prescient even now. It's something that I have brought forward many times over. All of this enmity is a simple distraction. It is hatred that those, which, by the way, I did talk about at the Oxford Union speech as well. Enmity towards Jews is an old trick by those in positions of power even before capitalism existed, even before the Industrial Revolution. It is utilized as a simple mechanism of distraction. Okay? Anti-Semitism means spreading enmity towards the Jews. When the accursed Tsarist monarchy was living its last days, it tried to incite ignorant workers and peasants against the Jews. The Tsarist police, in alliance with the landowners and the capitalists, organized pogroms against the Jews. The hate of the workers and the peasants. The landowners and capitalists tried to divert against the Jews. In other countries, too, we often see the capitalists fomenting hatred against the Jews in order to blind the workers, to divert their attention from the real enemy of the working people, capital. Hatred towards the Jews persists only in those countries where slavery to the landowners and capitalists created abysmal ignorance among the workers and the peasants. Only the most ignorant and downtrodden people can believe the lies and slander that are spread about the Jews. This is survival of ancient feudal times, when the priests burned heretics at the stake, when the peasants lived in slavery, and when the people were crushed and inarticulate. This ancient feudal ignorance is passing away. The eyes of the people are being opened. It is not the Jews who are enemies of the working people. The enemies of the working people are the capitalists of all countries. Among the Jews, there are working people, and they form the majority. They are our brothers who, like us, are oppressed by capital. They are our comrades in the struggle for socialism. Among the Jews, there are kulaks, exploiters, and capitalists, just as there are among the Russians and among the people of all nations. The capitalists strive to sow and foment hatred between workers of different faiths, different nations, and different races. Those who do not work are kept in power by the power and strength of capital. Rich Jews, like rich Russians and the rich in all countries, are in alliance to oppress, crush, rob, and disunite the workers. Shame on accursed Tsarism, which tortured and persecuted the Jews. Shame on those who foment hatred towards the Jews, who foment hatred towards other nations. Long live the fraternal trust and fighting alliance of the workers of all nations in the struggle to overthrow capital. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. There is perhaps no more concise and prescient statement on the unnecessary division that is very successfully created for people who must be united in one cause, that people who have the exact same class positions and the exact same struggles and the exact same wants and needs. It's simply one of the oldest forms of bigotry. And the reality of the matter is, it is a very successful method. I do not agree with it. I think it's untrue, first and foremost. I think that's the simplest way to put it, right? I don't agree when people say like, nah, you don't understand. This is how Jews are. It's like, no, they're not. There is no singular group that is monolithic, okay? It does not exist. That's not a real concept, okay? That is mystical thinking. That is idealistic thinking. That is good-bad dynamics. I do not traffic in these conspiracies, and I do not believe in these arguments because that's not how human beings are, okay? It is immaterial and unproductive, and created as a mechanism of distraction. And I think a lot of people fall into these fallacies because of their liberalism. Okay? Liberalism causes people to think in good, bad dynamics. Okay? Liberalism causes people to think in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when you think that way, you always have to find an enemy. Okay? Someone has to be doing things, pulling the strings, because you refuse to see that those who are openly pulling the strings in broad daylight and engaging in class collaboration are those in positions of power, the capital owners, a consortium, a network of capital owners who are in positions of power all around the globe, regardless of their background. And they do this because they've designed society in a way that suits the profit motive. They do this in a way to ensure that they still end up reinforcing the structures that bind us. Let's see what Noam Chomsky had to say about this.
It's a little bit different. For one thing, there's two questions. There's a number of questions to ask about the book, I'm sure. Yeah. The one thing has to do with the quality of their claims. The other is about its reception. Notice that I think it is well received, and I think the reason is it exculpates the U.S. government. It says, look, we're fine. But what can we do? There's this powerful Jewish lobby that's controlling us. So we'd be delighted to be benevolent and,
Dude, banger. Straight up. It abdicates responsibility away from America, American capitalists, the American State Department. It's such a comfortable little narrative. And it is no different. It's a dual narrative that exists when Americans also look at the situation in Israel and go, well, they say they're doing this for Jews, right? And think, okay, maybe fucking this has something to do with Judaism. Like they're saying they're doing this for Judaism, right? When in fact, American Jews have very different opinions and a very different relationship with Israel from one another. They are not in agreement with one another on their relationship with Israel and how it must exist or how it should exist. And this is before we even factor in the very desperate and very deliberate social conditioning that exists and how Zionism has basically reformed itself as a new national religion for a lot of Reform Jews in America, okay? In their upbringing, in their development. Having said that, however, we always forget to mention something truly important in this process, which is Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism historically has predated Jewish Zionism. It blows my mind that people just simply don't understand this. Like, it was actually Jews in the UK that openly criticized the Balfour Declaration. Lord Balfour was not exactly a fan of Jews. He was, however, a Christian Zionist. We never consider CUFI, Christians United for Israel, and its importance in this subject. We never consider that there are 10 times more rabid evangelical Christian Zionists in this country than there are Jews in total. Anti-Zionist, Zionists, it doesn't matter. The number of Christian Zionists in this country who believe in a Armageddon theological justification for why Israel must exist in the ways that it does as a ethno-state for the chosen sons of God numbers 10 times more than the number of Jews all Jews in general, anti-Zionist Jews, pro-Zionist Jews, ultra-Zionist Jews alike. Yeah, Zionism started with Balfour, clueless. No. Do you think that I am unfamiliar with the inception of Zionism? Do you think I don't know who fucking Theodor Herzl is? Are you stupid? I'm just saying that Theodor Herzl, despite being secular himself, had to make as many different arguments as he possibly could to justify this to an audience of global Jewish community, to an audience of Jews who did not like the argument at all originally. Edwin Montague was the only Jewish minister at the time who was very critical of the Balfour Declaration. He barely justified it. He called it straight up settler colonialism. No, that's a justification, chatter. It was a different time. That was him selling it to other colonialists to say, we will aid in your effort of controlling this region. That is a justification. We just look back at it now. That's the reason why the early JNF, like Jewish National Funds and whatnot, were openly considered colonial funds. Like, they knew that what they were doing was settler colonialism, and that's how they were trying to present it to non-Jews who were also involved in this process, who also were like, no, this is great. Theodor Herzl originally went to the Ottoman Empire and was like, give me Palestine. The Ottoman Empire was like, no thanks. Yeah. Herzl famously rode the Cecil Roads. You are being invited to help make history. Herzl rode the roads. It doesn't involve Africa, but a piece of Asia Minor. Not Englishmen, but Jews. How then do I happen to turn to you, since this is an out-of-the-way matter for you? How indeed? Because it is something colonial. You, Mr. Rhodes, are a visionary politician or a practical visionary. I want you to put the stamp of your authority on the Zionist plan and to make the following declaration to a few people who swear by you. I, Rhodes, have examined this plan and found it correct and practicable. It is a plan full of culture, excellent for the group of people for whom it is directly designed, and quite good for England, for Greater Britain. This man was only invested in the development of a Jewish ethno-state. Okay, Theodor Herzl. And there were, he was far from the most aggressive at the time. I would say Jabotinsky was far worse in his commentary and his rhetoric and his open declarations and allegiances with fascism. But Theodor Herzl, seen as the, godfather of Israel, did not really care. He had one mind. He had one mindset. He would go and make a religious justification to religious Jews. He would go and make a secular justification to secular Jews. He would go and make a colonialist justification to colonialist non-Jews. It didn't matter. Do you understand? It was more so just, I really want this. I really want this bad. But let's get back to Noam Chomsky. Yeah, even a socialist justification. That's the other part. Labor Zionism. This is what I was talking about. Thank you, Time Without an OO, for coming in hot. The biggest funds after Weitz's JNF, Jewish National Fund, were literally called PICA and JCA, the Palestine Colonialization Association and the Jewish Colonization Association. It wasn't really hidden. Why wasn't it really hidden? Because back then, this was a way to say, no, this is good. We're doing settler colonialism. They didn't have that same fucking mindset. Like they didn't look at this term in the same woke ways that we now understand colonialism as a bad thing, okay? It was a good thing being presented. Victims of colonialism were even less, it had even less voice They barely have a voice now. There was a positive association with the term, not a negative one. Anyway, let's continue.
Helping people are natural instincts, but we're trapped by the Jewish lobby. Well, that's a pretty good reason, I think, why it is accepted. Yeah. The second question is about the thesis. I mean, can it really be that a small ethnic lobby controls U.S. policy? I mean, if anybody believes that thesis, there's a tactical suggestion that follows immediately. Put on your tie and jacket, go to the executive offices of Lockheed Martin, General Electric, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, and explain to them that your interests are being harmed by a little lobby which you can put out of business in 5 minutes. Okay, that's the tactical suggestion that follows. Does anybody pursue it? No, because it's absurd. I mean, the claim, this is actually an interesting, Mearsheimer and Wald are very good scholars. We're called realist IR scholars. According to realist scholarship, states pursue what is called the national interest, which primarily security. It's an anarchic world, and states try to preserve their own security, well-being of their own populations, and the national interest. There's a lot of questions that are open there. First of all, what is the national interest? I mean, is the national interest of the CEO of General Electric the same as the interest of the janitor who cleans his floors? No, their interests are quite different. So what's the national interest?
Where to start?
Well, in practice, it turns out that the interests of state power and concentrated economic power. Take a look at the formation of policy. That's what it defends. Is the national interest in that sense harmed by U.S. policy towards Israel? Well, pretty hard to argue that.
This is why I always say, and I said this in my Oxford speech as well, saying Israel has anything to do with Judaism is like saying ISIS has anything to do with Islam. Okay? ISIS is true Islam, Israel is true Judaism. These are both silly attitudes. These are wrong. Okay? At its base, it's just a fundamentally incorrect position. And it also revolves around the notion that these people have a monolithic understanding and a monolithic approach. Okay? That all Jews believe this or all Muslims believe this. It's wrong. And another thing that I regularly mention that I brought up in my Oxford speech as well, which is that if all Americans tomorrow became card-carrying anti-Zionists, every single American Jew tomorrow became a card-carrying anti-Zionist, it would not change America's dynamic with Israel even a little bit. Okay? It would probably make way for even more support and even more protests in general. But I promise you, the American state would still support Israel. And there is truth to this reality, as I've often talked about as well. J Street did a poll on American Jews, finding that 70% of American Jews believe in refusing offensive weapons to Israel, denying weapon shipments to Israel in an effort to get them to agree to the ceasefire conditions. 70%. Has that changed Biden's calculation? Since that fucking poll came out, Biden gave another $600 million to Israel. He hugged and kissed Israel Herzog, the president of Israel. Or is his name Israel Herzog? Sorry. What was it? It is, right? Or am I fucking up his name? I forget. What's the name of the president of Israel? Isaac Herzog, not Israel Herzog. Sorry. Thank you. He hugged and kissed him. Okay? Tim Apple. A Tim Apple moment. And, this is important for people to comprehend, I think. At its most basic, simple truth, it's just a falsehood. And I'm never going to fucking tell you a lie. I'm never going to tell you something I don't believe. It's not like, I'm secretly ashamed of the real truths about anti-Semitism. That's like what anti-Semites always act like. The criticism of Israel must be anti-Semitic in nature. It has to be. And that people who criticize Israel are actually secretly anti-Semitic themselves. but are hiding the truth because they're scared, because they don't want people to see the reality. They, they don't want to get canceled or whatever, right? And that's just not the truth. I just don't believe it. And I think it's ridiculous. I think it's fucking ridiculous.
You have a responsibility to make a distinction between your opposition to that state and your opposition to that individual person, just like you have a responsibility, no matter how you feel about the People's Republic of China, not to take out your animosity towards the People's Republic of China on a Chinese American person. But the problem, it seems to me, that we have in fighting against people who conflate Israel and Jews and therefore take out their anger against Israel on Jews is that we're trying to ask them to make a distinction between Israel as a state and Jews as a group of people. But the organized American Jewish community is not making that distinction ourselves so often, right? So you find that the Jewish organizations are often saying something along the lines of that being a Zionist or supporting Israel is inherent in being Jewish, right? First of all, just that statement really doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. And not only does it not make sense, this is Peter Beinart, by the way, who also had his own very public evolution in broad daylight, going from a liberal Zionist to an anti-Zionist over the years. And I think he's a very valuable voice in this. But he's now going to basically spell out exactly what I've been saying over and over again, that Israel associating itself with Judaism and using it cynically as a fucking shield whenever there's like worthy criticism against Israel is unironically making people more anti-Semitic. I guess, like, as a Muslim living in the United States of America whose name is Hasan, regardless of how white I am, I recognize how dangerous of a prospect this is because of the ways that the understanding of Islam has been bastardized. The understanding of Islam has been falsely presented as ISIS. All Muslims are jihadists. All Muslims are religious fundamentalists. Like, I know what that's like when an entire group of people are cast with this violent brush. So seeing Israel do it to itself is strange. And I think it's short-sighted. I think Israel doing this as a cynical mechanism, like a cynical shield to deploy, is so short-sighted because this dangerous conflation causes people to be more anti-Semitic.
Right? Because Judaism existed for a long time before Zionism existed, and there have always been significant numbers of Jews, right, for a variety of reasons, who opposed political Zionism in the state of Israel, right? So, but it's also just very dangerous because you are making exactly the conflation, right, that we want people who oppose Israel and Zionism not to make, right? And so when the chief rabbi of Israel, of the United Kingdom, said a few years ago, he said that Zionism leaps from every page of the Siddur, of the Jewish prayer book, right? Again, it's a very strange statement given that we've had prayer books since long, long before, Herzl and Pinsker came along in the late 19th century. But then why shouldn't someone write Free Palestine on a Jewish prayer book? You've basically just said it's the equivalent of a political pamphlet for the state of Israel, right? And that's a very, very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah. Like utilizing synagogues and Jewish community centers at the behest of the Zionist project, where you sell West Bank properties that the Israeli state has illegally occupied after purging the indigenous population from those homes, and then utilizing the mechanisms, the dangerous and violent mechanisms of the state to overtake those and the ancestral homelands of the indigenous Palestinian population, and then selling those houses illegally in direct contravention with international law and the local laws of whichever state that they're doing this in, is a very, very dangerous prospect. You are smearing Western Jews with this fascist brush. Scary stuff. It's ridiculous. Using places of faith like that is so gross. Anyway, let's start with Syria. Syrian rebel forces have seized Damascus as the Assad regime topples. Now, this is a really interesting and, dare I say, complex situation. The morality of Assad is not complex. Assad is a brutal tyrant and also, dog shit statesman in general. Can't speak for his, acumen in eye surgery. But as far as the rulership over Syria goes, not a good guy. This is something that I've talked about, especially as of late, quite a bit. Having said that, however, I analyze it in a way that is not dissimilar in many respects to Saddam Hussein, because there are plenty of people. Syria is a very diverse country. There are plenty of people who have been destroyed by the brutality of the Assad regime. This much is true. But the destabilization of Syria still, at the end of the day, benefits the United States of America. And we will talk in depth about all the parties involved today. I have already covered it. I have given you a little briefer, but it's a situation where it's literally like neither side is good, with the exception, I guess, of the Kurdish groups in the region. But even the Kurdish groups that are good in the region are still directly funded and trained by America. So even good groups can still be used as a weapon by the American State Department. But let's get started.
In his dynastic heartland and putative holdout on the Mediterranean coast, where they ride a statue of his father through the streets. In Hama, seized in the Assad era, or Thursday, where a reporter sheds his protective vest to embody the emergence of a new Syria. But perhaps the most instructive place to look is here, in the former regime's darkest corner. The corridors of Saidnaya prison, north of Damascus, where they killed so many thousands, they built a crematorium outside. A young child comes into view. Look at that boy, poor thing, they say. These women, at the heart of a brutal industrial oppression, being freed, being told to say God is great, not to worry about possessions, about ID cards, about where to go and how. Another prison, the same story. He says, there's no state anymore, sister. Damn the state, it's fallen. Come down, come on. Russia's foreign ministry left to confirm that Assad was now out of the country, having left instructions to transfer power peacefully. Assad's prime minister saying he will stay in Syria to hand over government functions to a transitional administration. But for now, real power rests with this man, Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, leader of the Islamist HTS forces, listed as terrorists by many countries, that spearheaded the regime's collapse. For days...
No, he got a copy of... listen, he got a copy of Why Nations Fail from Acemoglu, the Turkish MIT guy, and he got woke. He read one copy of Why Nations Fail, and he was like, we got to protect these institutions. Oh.
He's been talking in terms of moderation, of safeguards for minorities. Inside Damascus's Umayyad Mosque, a message of victory for Sunni Islam.
This is a new victory, my brothers, for the entire Islamic nation. Victory, my brothers, marks a new chapter in the region's history. We have avoided the dangers of leaving Syria.
Overall, is this a positive or negative? I'm gonna keep it $150 with you. Okay, it is a very weird situation, and I don't think it will overall be positive. We'll see. But because Assad is so fucking bad, like, there are a shit ton of people, especially of Sunni background, that are going to be celebrating this, understandably. There are no... I'll go so far as to say there are no clear winners in this, especially for the Syrian population, other than Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Okay? And it's really interesting to think about, because a lot of people falsely have said, I am a neo-Ottomanist, Turkish feudal warlord that wants to restore the glory of the Ottoman Caliphate. And if that was the case, then this would be the number one moment where I'm literally aligned with American State Department interests, and I could just freely talk about how incredible Erdogan is as a statesman. Because guess what? He did the damn thing. He did. In terms of realpolitik, Recep Tayyip Erdogan came out as the number one winner of this equation, more so than even Israel. Do you understand? Like, he's had a genuinely growing and very volatile anti-Syrian, anti-refugee movement in his country. He basically gets to send a lot of, well, not even send the Syrians back. They voluntarily will go back to their homes. There are millions of Syrians living inside of Turkey, which has created a lot of anger and animosity against the Syrians in the country. He now also gets to have a major say in what happens in this, border nation. There has always been a lot of back and forth between Erdogan and Assad. If Syrians have voluntarily returned to their homes, how is this a bad thing? Oh, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's, look, no one should be forced out of their homes by a brutal regime, okay? That's why I'm saying that just like every other real movement during the Arab Spring, the Syrian revolutionary forces did not start at an incorrect starting point. There was a very valid reason for people to rise up against the Assad regime. But, as is the case globally, very quickly, I think other regional operatives, whether it be Russia that came to defend Syria, whether it be Iran that came to defend the Syrian regime, or whether it be America and America's obviously number one ally in the region, Turkey, and also Israel, that took advantage of the instability and used it to shove their own actors into the equation to suit their own interests. It will, however, never not be funny to me, someone growing up in the United States of America now for the past 10 years, to see a former Al-Qaeda leader get this much positive coverage. In my opinion, this is so close to the Afghan Civil War, like in the ways that the American State Department operated there, and the valid reasons as to why many Muslims in Afghanistan were understandably against the USSR-aligned Afghan government at the time. It is damn near identical. And I think we know what happened in the aftermath of arming and offering logistical support to the brave Mujahideen. It is wild to me that we are once again doing the exact same thing. Now, I have no good solutions to this. I don't. I do not know what the best pathway forward for Syria is. But the only thing I will say is that it is understandable that the Syrians that were victim to the brutalities of the Assad regime are celebrating. Having said that, those who have quote unquote liberated Syria from the throes of Assad's brutal regime are unfortunately not great either. Are you also very concerned about Turkey taking its influence over the victorious rebel factions and turning them against the Kurds? I think either it's going to be a Balkanization that is still pieced up by the Western forces. Israel will also have a say. I don't suspect Turkey like just straightforwardly pummeling the Kurdish groups in the region. And if they do, that will still be at the behest of America. We shall see.
Syria as a playground for Iranian ambitions, spreading sectarianism and corruption.
The Assad family's home, the vast presidential palace, now a site for a sort of revolutionary tourism, an opportunity to reclaim some of the regime's ill-gotten gains.
Victory to Syria. Syria remains and Assad is in hell, in the dustbin of history.
But for millions of Syria's displaced, it's their own homes they're desperate to reclaim. So often these roads have been clogged with those fleeing to safety. Now the polarity has been reversed. Hope embodied in a traffic jam. But still plenty of space for fear of what's to follow. Already there's been fighting between rival rebel groups in the north, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army taking the town of Manbij from the US-backed.
Remember when they were saying to me in the chat, like, oh, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army, like, they're not, you're wrong. Turkey is not a player in this. Like, come on, dog. It's about to get, in my opinion, it's about to get more fucked somehow. I'm a Syrian Christian, just hoping whatever it is next for the country, my people won't be persecuted, to be honest. Yeah. See, that's the other side of this. The other side of this is also that, first of all, let me just say one thing. I think that Russia is so busy in Ukraine that they could not offer any sort of material support to Syria. But I don't even know if they wanted to. I think that I suspect that Putin wanted Erdogan to make inroads with the Assad regime, and Assad refused, partially because they don't suspect Erdogan to be anything but a person who is operating at the behest of Western interests. But virtually every other group in the region that could offer some kind of support, virtually every other group in the region that could offer any support, like Hezbollah, for example, has been destabilized and is now more focused on rebuilding Lebanon after Israel pummeled southern Lebanon. And all of the axis of resistance against Israel in the region is licking their wounds and trying to reconstruct. And Iran is spread too thin. This created an opportunity for all of the cells that are anti-Assad, that range from secular forces, ethnic Kurdish militias, Marxist-Leninist forces, all the way to the Salafists, former Al-Qaeda and former ISIS operatives, and Turkish-backed Salafists to take advantage of this opportunity and seemingly fucking take over Syria in a matter of a week. That is precisely what happened here. And I am fearful of what will happen to the many different ethnic minorities, ranging from Kurdish people to the Shia population to the Christians, especially under the Assyrians, especially under the rulership of, I mean, straight up Al-Qaeda. Like, these guys are former Al-Qaeda leaders. And if you listen to what they have to say, even the Salafists that are under the training of the Turkish government, like, make no mistake, like, some of the stuff that they're talking about is still very much global jihad. So it's a terrifying prospect. So I don't know what will happen. It's impossible not to see random people being released from prison and the celebration that creates, that you know, the celebration that invokes. Okay, it's a good thing objectively. I am not of the mindset that, like, every single person that was imprisoned by the Assad government was a fucking ISIS terrorist or whatever. Okay, that's ridiculous. There are so many people who were falsely imprisoned. Having said that, however, the very fact that the major forces here, like major players in the coalition, being former Al-Qaeda leadership, I think it's understandable for me to demonstrate some level of concern, especially for all of the non-Sunni Syrian populations and even the Sunni Syrian populations, as a matter of fact. There is a reason why Hamas originally was in favor of toppling the Assad government, despite the fact that they literally operated in the way that they operate out of Doha right now. They used to operate out of Damascus. Okay? Because there was a valid reason for the uprising against Assad. But if you are to expect me to sit here and be like, this is going to be fantastic for Syrians because the major coalition head, who was a former Al Qaeda guy, is now saying, "Oh, that was just a phase." When we were like decapitating Christians, when we were beheading Christians, that was just a phase for me. I'm good with that. When I say global jihad and, you know, rising up in arms against the Christian heretics, like that was just a phase. I'm good now. It's hard for me to believe that. And this is before we even get to Israel in the equation as well. While the Assad regime is not exactly pro-Palestine and hasn't been for quite a while, okay, Syria provided a logistical hub for the axis of resistance in the region, and it was a shaky allegiance that they had, specifically with the Iranian government. But it was still a logistical hub nonetheless, a logistical hub for Hezbollah and a logistical hub for Iran in general. Did you see the Saydana prison? Yeah, I'm gonna cover the Saydana prison as well. That part is really fucking insane. Saydana prison apparently has it's like a fresh hell. They have that's the one with the multiple floors that are impossible to reach at this point, right? Look, I question anyone that says like HTS is reformed. I don't think it's only time will tell. I am very skeptical. We shall see. Having said that, however, yeah, there are literally multiple under like basement floors of the prison, inside of the prison complex, that are impossible to open up unless you have someone from the Assad regime. Syria, mind-blowing figure circulating about the Saydnaya prison in Damascus. The complex was believed to have up to 20,000 detainees, but the red building itself, photo, is said to have more than double. Some levels still haven't been reached. There are several floors under the Saydnaya prison which couldn't be reached so far due to the special unique security mechanisms. This is the red building. It's the section dedicated to civilians arrested by Assad's regime since 2011. There are motherfuckers who left the prison who thought that the former Assad was still in charge. Like, they just don't know what the fuck is going on. After over 10 hours of work, the doors of the red prison of Saydnaya are finally broken. New waves of detainees are being liberated. The man filming, looking for his family while documenting this. How could we believe this is happening? Yeah, there were prisoners who have been in there for so long they thought they were being liberated by Saddam's army. Like, it's insane. I think it's important to note that the Turkish HTS is different from the Syrian Free Army, which captured Damascus. The latter is directly funded by America, whereas the former is indirectly through Turkey. Bottom line is they are distinct groups, and history suggests infighting may occur when there's a vacuum, so I don't think this spells the end of the Civil War. Yeah, I don't think so either. Rarely ever do you have like so much sectarian infighting amongst groups that are also directly being funded on either directly or indirectly through a regional ally like Turkey, still funded by, the American State Department. Bazı tutukların akıllı telefonun ne olduğunu bilmeye belirtiliyor. They're saying that detainees don't even know what a smartphone is. Look, chaotic images from the infamous Saydnaya prison with people advancing layer by layer to free the prisoners. Like, it's crazy. 8 years ago, Amnesty reported that prisoners were being left without food for days, sometimes even weeks. People are tortured and beaten for hours without breaks, sometimes every single day. Many die and are left to rot in crowded cells, while others are alive with diseases spreading. I think there's like a child that was born in the prison or some shit too. It was like fucking insane. I mean, I don't know. This is like, some of it is fog of war stuff. But I mean, it is a fresh hell for sure. And it's impossible not to, look at these images and think, this is a bad thing. It is a good thing. Out, you're free, out. Bashar al-Assad has fallen. I need my ID. You don't need ID. The checkpoints are gone. I'm from Homs. He's liberated too. Then on men's level, what about the women? The women are out. Don't worry. The son of a bitch is gone. Yeah, I mean, not to fucking, not to lighten the mood at all and make this silly, but yeah, it is like impelled down. I mean, it's a fresh hell, literally. We'll look at what Sina Tusi had to say about this. But yeah, I am not an Assadist. and all memes aside about talking about the fucking line of Damascus or whatever, it's silly shit that people. I think being an Assadist is like being someone who's pro-Putin, where it's just campish shit overall. Having said that, however, I am still very skeptical over what will happen in Syria, because it's not like I'm pro-America or pro-Turkey either in the region. And I fear that the Syrian people will still continue to suffer, and there will most likely still be a lot of ethnic strife and a lot of infighting.
And Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. And while Kurds further east celebrate stunning gains over Assad and Iranian-backed forces, fears here about the potential for ISIS to gain ground.
We will also continue to maintain our presence in eastern Syria, which is solely to ensure the enduring defeat of ISIS and has nothing to do with other aspects of this conflict.
And rebel forces have entered Tartus, home to one of Russia's 2 Syrian naval bases. What now for Moscow's foothold on the Mediterranean? What now for the many regime loyalists here fearing reprisals? From the occupied Golan Heights, Israel's prime minister claiming credit for events in Syria. The result, he says, of blows dealt to Hezbollah and Iran. Israel sending forces.
Reddit has gone full pro HTS because of Putin is wild to see, man. Yeah, it's especially wild to see because the guys that HTS represents exactly the type of dudes that the average American thinks is the jihadists, like all Muslims are like that. HTS is, originally a global jihad organization, or at least the guy is fucking Al Qaeda. I don't know what else to say. It's so crazy when they when they point to Hamas, like Reddit points to Hamas and says these are Salafist jihadists, these are scary guys. And then when there are people who literally have done the, beheadings of Christian people and shit like that, all of a sudden they're like, no, we're with those guys because everybody told us that those guys are good. It's kind of wild how big of a demonstration of the power of manufactured consent is in this story. He was in every Islamist group on earth. If you're the emir of the Al-Nusra Front, okay? If you got this in your resume, former Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Mujahideen Shura Council, Islamic State of Iraq, the Al-Nusra Front. What a goddamn resume. I mean, this guy is on the terror watch list for America since in perpetuity. All he had to do was take the fucking headdress off, take a shower, trim the beard a little bit, and put the goddamn fatigues on for everybody to be like, nah, he's woke now. Yeah, this guy was in the terrorist groups he was collecting infinity stones. It's crazy. One must ask the question why I have this attitude towards a very different attitude that I demonstrate towards Hamas as I do towards this guy. And no, it's not because I'm fuck America unconditionally. I understand how violent and ruthless the Assad regime was. Okay, I get it. I get why people would be like, yeah, this guy is our salvation. Okay, especially if you're Sunni, if you're being oppressed. It's hard, man. It's hard for me to trust the dude who has spent most of his fucking career in ISIS adjacent groups. Yeah, they put him through the Zelensky beam. All of a sudden he's wearing fatigues. He's clean cut, talking about how he's reading Why Nations Fail and shit. And I'm supposed to be yeah, no, this guy is good now. I mean, that's crazy. And I know Charles Lister likes or is talked about them a lot. And I like Charles Lister's commentary on other stuff. But on this issue, I feel like I'm a little bit more skeptical than he is. You know what I mean? Yeah, they Zelenskyfied him. Yeah, he's reading Settlers of Catan. Or not Settlers of Catan. Oh, yeah. All right, let's continue with this video.
Into the UN buffer zone. Syrians know all too well the perils of this moment, but across the country they're choosing to focus on its
he's reading the board game Settlers of Catan by Jay Sakai.
Potential. Nowhere more so than here in Damascus, and a young couple experiencing the revolutionary version of a shotgun wedding.
It's the most beautiful moment of our lives, and because we won't experience this joy twice, I decided my wedding would be today, on 8/12/2024, a date we'll remember. It's an unforgettable day we'll teach our...
Okay, this is like totally random and not the main point, but I do hate that people still fucking shoot guns into the air to celebrate. Is so bad. It's such a bad practice that needs to be abolished in its entirety because it's so fucking dangerous. Every time I see that shit, I'm like, dude, those bullets land, dog, and it literally kills people. It's so fucking dangerous. Not the point here at all, but I hate seeing it. I'm like, oh, it's so unimaginably fucking dangerous, dog. It is so dangerous. You're being the too woke friend right now. Listen, if that's the one time where I'm the friend who's too woke, then so be it. Okay? Straight up. I think it's one of the worst practices. One of the worst fucking practices. It is so goddamn dangerous and people get killed all the time or at least injured all the fucking time. Sorry, call me fucking woke. It's just, it literally is a thing I cannot stand.
Children about.
Just what will this day come to signify? A question perhaps for Syria's as yet unborn generation.
Harry Fawcett reporting. Well, ruling Syria was a family business for the Assads that began in 1971. Here, Edward Heath was prime minister at the time. First Hafiz, the father, and then Bashar, the son, who became the heir apparent after his...
Yeah, this is funny. Dude, every day there's a new Jelani statement. It's so funny. It's fucking awesome. He said, new Ahmad al-Shara Jawlani statement. To all the military forces in the city of Damascus, it is strictly forbidden to approach public institutions, which will remain under the supervision of the former prime minister until they are officially handed over. And it is also forbidden to fire bullets in the air. Interestingly, when it was first written, it said Al-Rais and not Al-Qaid, but then quickly edited. Very interesting. Yeah. Even woke-ass Jelani's like, bro, we can't do that. We can't be doing that. That shit is not good. He's woke. He's DEI. He's so DEI. They hit him with the Zelensky ray. Oh. Anyway.
His older brother died in a car accident in 1994. The Assad family survived the Cold War, multiple regional wars, and a civil war. But in the end, they couldn't survive the distraction of Russia in Ukraine and Iran and Hezbollah facing off against Israel.
The President of Syria and Mrs. al-Assad, Your Majesty.
Once upon a time in 2002, Assad, the former eye doctor, and his wife, the doctor's daughter from Acton. The young
Al-Rais means the president and Al-Qaid means the commander.
President of Syria was someone that many thought they could do business with.
Syria is going to be an important part of building a peaceful and stable future in the Middle East.
I was there. The First Lady of Syria was so unlike any other in the region that Vogue called her the Rose of the
No wonder Assad was a wife guy. Like
desert and put her on the cover. The Assad family became pin-ups of bliss and normality. But family history told a different story. Bashir's father, Hafez, who came from the small Alawite minority, had ruled Syria with an iron fist for over a quarter of a century. He was respected in Moscow and Washington and feared at home. And a decade after the son took power, the Arab Spring came to Syria and the other side of Assad's character came to the fore. Deraa in the southwest, the regime shot dozens as ordinary citizens echoed the cries of freedom from Tunisia, Egypt and Libya. The former eye surgeon became blind to the suffering of his own people, inflicted by him and his henchmen. In his prisons, torture, including of children, became the norm, and hundreds of thousands of civilians disappeared. The catalogue of brutality mounted, as did the bodies, almost 500,000. Barrel bombs dropped by planes onto residential neighborhoods and hospitals. and in 2018 a chemical attack in Douma that may have killed over 1,000. It was condemned by President Obama, who ended up ignoring his own red lines and stayed on the sidelines. What kept Assad in power was military help from some powerful friends. First, neighboring Iran. The Shia power helping Assad's Alawite Shiite minority. Here, Iran's pin-up commander Qasem Soleimani addressed the troops fighting the Syrian rebels before he was killed by an airstrike ordered by President Trump. And then there was Moscow, whose planes and helicopter gunships ruled from the Syrian air. Putin and Assad had both taken power in 2000. They believed themselves indispensable to the rule that keeps or kept their country together, and increasingly their end justified some brutal means. Syria's civil war exported its consequences. 7 million ended up on the refugee trail in Turkey and Lebanon, and in 2015 on the long trek to Europe. Many of them heading to Germany, huddled masses triggering unintended consequences inside the EU. The rise of the anti-immigrant far right, breathing life into Germany's AfD. New life into France's Marine Le Pen. More life and power into Hungary's Viktor Orban. And even providing Farage's Brexit campaign with perhaps its most powerful, if misleading, poster. President Assad was kept in power by Iran and Russia, and with one distracted by a standoff with Israel and the other by war in Ukraine, they threw him under the bus this week, leaving his country up for grabs. Whoever ends up ruling Syria, and however, the next few months are bound to show once again that what happens in Syria doesn't stay in Syria. Well, with Assad gone and the country in the hands of different groups...
Putin sold him out. I mean, I think Putin's relationship with Assad was always a strategic one. It wasn't like they were super on board with one another regardless. Plus, he has his hands full with the whole invading and bombing the shit out of Ukraine situation. That's not even true. Assad is in Russia. No, I know, but historically speaking, I don't think that Putin was always on board. And not only that, but also, just because he's in Russia right now doesn't change that dynamic at all. Russia utilizes Syria. It has regional interests. It also wants to. Russia is anti-America at every step, and it uses Syrian naval bases as well. I think Russia had too much focus and resources in Ukraine, and would have spared stuff if he could have saved his air base and naval base in Tartus and Latakia. Yeah.
Groups of rebels. What now for the future of Syria? A little earlier, I spoke to the Syrian columnist and foreign policy expert, Dr. Hyde. He's a consulting fellow.
Shut the fuck up. This dude's name is not Hyde.
At the think tank Chatham House in London. And I began by asking him if he thought that Assad's downfall was made possible by his allies being distracted with other wars.
So if you look at Russia's position, has moved most of its equipment as well as personnel away from Syria because of the war in Ukraine. And it was difficult for them to then allocate the resources needed for Assad to be able to stop opposition fighters. And I think for the Russians, it was sort of their calculations that we have invested all this money and the regime has not been able to fight back, so why would we just go ahead and then repeat the same mistakes again? For Iran, it was a similar situation, especially since Hezbollah, its main arm, not only in the Middle East, but in Syria, which contributed to the protection of the regime for years, is now completely distracted in its own war with Israel.
And so what happens now? Because there are so many different rebel forces, from Kurdish separatists to, Islamists of different, levels of extremism that have converged on the big cities. Who's going to actually run the place now?
Syrians are celebrating today, I think many are trying to figure out what tomorrow holds. The problem right now is, as you mentioned, you have rebel groups, different ones, not only the ones who started the fight, but then you have local armed groups who then also started their own fights in order to liberate their areas from the regime. This is what complicates the situation. How will then the political opposition that is now entering negotiations with different groups will be able to then establish not only contact but influence over the groups that are controlling the territories on the ground, and who will be able to then determine who will have the biggest say in what the transitioning body would look like.
I mean, given the state of the Middle East at the moment, if Syria implodes or becomes chaotic, or there's another kind of civil war that results from this, what are the consequences going to be for the region?
Big consequences. You have the most obvious one will be the new flow of refugees to neighboring countries and potentially to Europe and elsewhere. Then you have the security element, then you have clashes maybe not only being contained to Syria, but involving other countries, groups even operating from Syria against other countries or carrying out attacks. Then you have the ISIS sort of threat, who the group has been gaining sort of more resources as well as carrying out more attacks in Syria, and this would create a golden opportunity for the group to be able to just carry out attacks not only in Syria but elsewhere as well.
Of course, you know, power is changing, including in Washington. Mr. Trump takes over at the end of January. I mean, does he have any impact on this new reality in the Middle East?
I think it does. The most obvious one is that most of the influential policymakers in the Biden administration, they have already moved on. They have secured other jobs or in the process of securing other jobs. So there is no one left to really look at what's happening in Syria and then try to play the leadership role that the US has usually played.
Finally, and very briefly, is Iran one of the principal backers of the Assad regime? Are they the biggest losers in this, and what consequences will that have for them?
I think it's safe to say that Iran will be the biggest loser. It seems that Iran will not be able to secure any of its interest in Syria. If you look at what they have been trying to use Syria for over the past years, is one, to continue to supply Hezbollah with weapons, and no matter who basically rules Damascus, it will be difficult for them to allow that, mainly due to the role that Hezbollah has played in killing Syrians across the country.
Is this from Financial Times? Oh, it is. Okay. Financial Times, consistently the best reporting. Straight up. I would say, especially since October 7th, Financial Times has become, I think, the best in terms of its coverage. Iran was done with Bashar al-Assad. It seems like there isn't any love lost. One Iranian insider accuses the Assad regime of leaking the positions of the Iranian military commanders. The insider said there had been long-standing frustration with Assad and Tehran for more. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't think anybody likes Assad. Like, I don't even think Russia likes Assad, even though they're offering him shelter, because there's a use for Assad. They can use him as a bargaining chip. For more than a year, it was clear as time had passed, he had become an obstacle, a liability. Some even called him a betrayer. His inaction cost us dearly, and he aligned himself with regional actors who promised him a future that never materialized. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, and Russia issue a joint statement calling for an end to the military combat in Syria and a political solution. I think they're going for a managed transition. We are coordinating to find a political solution to the crisis in Syria. The meeting of ministers stressed the importance of strengthening joint international efforts to increase humanitarian aid to the Syrian people. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. The fall of this regime is a fundamental act of justice. It is a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their country. It is also a moment of risk and uncertainty. Is Al-Qaeda good now? According to the West, former Al-Qaeda, reformed. reformed. He's reformed now. He got hit with a DEI ray. DEI ISIS. Terrorist modification. The New York Times, citing officials' reports of the U.S. intelligence agencies, the Biden administration are assessing Hayat Tahrir al-Shams and his leadership and potentially taking them off the terror watch list. The one person that I feel bad for in this is Tulsi Gabbard. I wonder what she's going to do. Like, there's anti-interventionists in the American government that were very critical of the Obama administration's dealings with Syria. And then there were people that took it a step further, I would say. And it always felt like Tulsi Gabbard was one of the people that took it a step further. The spirit of Aloha has left Damascus. Yeah, it lives on in Moscow for the time being. Yeah, I saw this tweet from Trump, which is definitely not from Trump. Opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive and are now on the outskirts of Damascus, obviously preparing to make a very big move towards taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine and with the loss there of over 600,000 soldiers, seems incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where former President Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, as all hell broke out with Russia stepping in. But now they are, like possibly Assad himself, being forced out. And it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia, other than that to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but it's not our friend. And the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. Dog, what are you saying? This is such a funny take from Trump. This is not our fight. It's like, okay, I don't know about that.
For decades.
Dr. Haidai, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thousands of Syrians displaced during the civil war after enduring often long and perilous journeys ended up settling right here in the UK. So today, many were out celebrating the fall of the regime that uprooted their lives in gatherings across the country. Some hope to return to Syria one day, but there's anxiety and hope that the news is not too good to be true. Francis Reid reports from one of the rallies in Trafalgar Square.
Celebration after so many sleepless nights, watching events unfold from 3,000 miles away. All those here in Trafalgar Square see the events of the last few days.
Senior administration officials briefed reporters on Syria. The SAO called the CENTCOM strike today on ISIS significant, with B-52s, F-15s, and A-10s dropping 140 munitions on 75 different targets in the Badia Desert. Today, there happened to be a broad gathering across a broad area, the official said, describing it as a part of a pattern of strikes against ISIS meetings and training that would continue. Despite rumors to the contrary, the SAO said, "We did not get any serious outreach from Assad, nor would we have considered it." The official would not say whether the administration planned to lift the foreign terrorist designation on HTS and its leader Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, but suggested the designation was not preventing the U.S. from engaging with the group. "We intend to engage with them appropriately," the official said. "We have contact with all Syrian groups." The official said the regime's chemical weapons were something we are very focused on. "We do have good fidelity on this type of thing." And he said, "I would not envision a scenario of U.S. boots on the ground to neutralize the weapons." On Iran, the official described its national security posture in dire terms. "The entire Iranian-backed artifice in the region, the brittleness, the weakness, the hollowing out, has completely changed the equation in the Middle East. It has lost its main proxy group, its entire military capacity destroyed. They have no strategic air defense, and they can't produce missiles." But he acknowledged it wasn't clear whether that would push Iran towards diplomacy or a decision to build a nuclear weapon. "If they were ever to make a fateful decision towards a nuclear weapon, we will not allow it." The ISIS fight moving forward. There are already clashes between Turkish-backed. So this is the other part that is going to make things interesting. The ISIS fight moving forward. There are already clashes between Turkish-backed HDS and US-backed, mostly Kurdish SDF in Manjib in northwest Syria. Remember how I talked about the both sides being US-backed to varying degrees? It's American-backed forces fighting against other American-backed forces by way of Turkey. And I don't even know if it's the HDS that's fighting. I don't know why they're saying it's the HDS that's fighting. This is the Foreign Affairs and Defense correspondent for PBS. I don't think it's HDS that's fighting the Kurdish SDF. I think it is rather the Turkish-backed forces in the region, the Syrian National Army, the SNA. The SAO said that a handful of senior officials have been speaking to their Turkish counterparts to try and deconflict. Additional fronts opening up, not in anyone's interest. Opposition groups need to work together. Some troops fighting ISIS in Badia were Assad's forces. The SAO said that as they peeled out, SDF filled some of that space. And the U.S. also helped coordinate safe passage of tens of thousands of civilians. Helped coordinate safe passage of tens of thousands of civilians from west to east. Yeah, Pentagon-backed groups versus CIA-backed groups versus Turkish-backed groups. Read NATO American-backed groups. Yeah. Yeah, I was right. SDF commander Mazlum Abdi says they are in contact with HTS and have not clashed with them. So HTS is Al-Qaeda, former Al-Qaeda, I apologize. And I think this reporter is incorrect. When he says Turkish-backed HTS and US-backed, mostly Kurdish SDF are fighting, I don't think that that's correct. I think he made a mistake. He meant Turkish-backed SNA. Because yes, the Turkish-backed forces, the Turkish-backed coalition forces are definitely, they have additional interests in mind.
As the liberation of Syria. A chance for change and maybe the possibility for those who want to return to do so. Maya al-Bakr.
Oh, urgent. The Washington Post, citing a senior U.S. administration official, we do not rule out removing Hayat Tahrir al-Sham from the terrorist list.
Is a political activist who fled Aleppo in 2015 after government forces came knocking on his door.
I have a mixed feeling. I didn't sleep for the last 2 days. I was just watching the news every single moment, waiting for this moment. We are in a very historical moment. We have so much hope, we hope for better future for Syria.
Then there's Abdul Karim, a neurosurgeon whose 2 little girls were born in exile.
We've been really displaced again and again. So my first daughter was born in Turkey, my second daughter was born in London, and I can't believe that this moment, that we've been waiting for this moment for not only 14 years, I would say for 54 years, Syrians are waiting for this moment. So I really can't describe how I feel, happiness, optimism, definitely, but really a promise that we will go back to build our country.
A new generation hoping to get to know Syria for the first time.
I don't remember anything of my country, so being able to see my country for practically the first time would be absolutely amazing. I'll get to see all my relatives back home. I'll be really happy, really excited.
Some 20,000 Syrian refugees were resettled in the UK between 20...
It's impossible not to feel joyous in this occasion, for sure. I'm just still very worried about what is to come. But yeah, I totally get why people will be fucking excited at the prospect of being able to return to their homes, return to their country.
2014 and 2020. Many of them never wanted to leave their homes and never imagined that they'd be living here now. And that's why across the UK, so many turned out today, including in Manchester. In West London, Syrian and Iraqi Christians came together to worship. For those in the Syrian Orthodox Church, they hope that reassurances that all will be protected will be honoured in the mosaic of faiths that make up Syria. Do you think many Syrians who moved to the UK will now want to return to Syria?
I think our people, they will have to wait to see what will happen. If safe, democratic, yes, I think majority that return, because our country is beautiful. Sunshine, weather, food, everything is our country.
Rula, a primary school teacher, grew up in a neighbourhood where all faiths live side by side.
Mixed emotions, I would say, at the moment. We just want the safety for people, regardless the faith, regardless the religion, regardless the beliefs.
So many have made their lives here in the UK while watching the horrors of war unfold for their families over the last decade. All while conflicts in the wider region and geopolitics of the biggest players buffeted the possibility for peace and fated their futures. There is still anxiety for Syrian communities in the UK, of course, but now also hope that all Syrians' prayers will be answered.
Just want to bring you some breaking news here on Sky News. In the last few moments, we have heard from the Russian state media TASS reporting that President Bashar al-Assad and his family members have arrived in Moscow, and Russia is providing them with asylum. That's according to a source in the Kremlin. It had been the case that Russia had told us that Assad had left Syria, that he had left in an aircraft from Syria, but we didn't know what his destination was, and indeed we didn't know where his family was. There had been speculation that maybe his wife and children had left Syria a few days ago. Russia just saying that all the family were out of the country. Well, now, in the last few moments, as I say, Russians...
97%. The people rejoice for the Lion of Syria, the most popular man in any country.
State media is reporting that Bashar al-Assad and indeed his family have arrived in Moscow, in the Russian capital, and Russia is providing them with asylum. At one stage, it was thought perhaps they had fled to the other Syrian ally, Iran. Maybe they were getting asylum in Tehran. But no, we are now told that the family is in Moscow. Let's bring in our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett. Ivor, we were only speaking a few minutes ago, weren't we?
The question was, I can't find it, but someone asked, I'm really not very educated on the Syrian civil war, but why are we worried about what's next to come? Asking from a place of lack of education and ignorance. A couple different reasons. One, you can point to Libya, you can point to Afghanistan, you can point to many other places where, like, depending on what kind of governance Syria will be subjected to, given its diverse background, given the pre-existing ethnic strife and the current power vacuum that exists there, these upcoming months will be very important on who gets to rule Syria and how they rule Syria. If you have, the former Al-Qaeda guys running it, as is being presented as like the senior partner in the coalition forces, I don't think that it's going to be all too positive. Wouldn't Afghanistan be a counterexample in terms of general stability? I don't think Afghanistan is better off being run by the Taliban. It's better off run by the Taliban than being invaded by the American forces. But even then, not by a very wide margin. It's not ethnic strife. Most of us love our non-Muslim neighbors more than our Muslim neighbors, the fucking Islamists that got training and support from Turkey and the USA. No, that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say ethnic strife. I don't mean like people are going to fucking rise up in arms against their, Christian neighbors or some shit. No, I'm saying that depending on who runs Syria and how they run Syria, there will be quote unquote ethnic strife. And besides that, there's still obviously, Kurdish forces that have never really stopped fighting against Kurdish forces that have never stopped fighting against the Turkish-backed Salafist forces either. Also, Afghanistan doesn't have a powerfully armed minority like the Kurds in northern Syria, and the Taliban have been around far longer than the HTS, so locals know them better. Yeah, like it's kind of crazy because the way that they're, if those guys start implementing like really fucking strict controls and start punishing non-Sunni Muslims, like how the fuck is that any better for the Syrian population?
About the whereabouts of the family, and now we know they are with you in Moscow.
Well, this is only according to one media outlet. This has come from TASS, Russia's state news agency, one of them, and they are quoting a source in the Kremlin, as you say. That is the only report we're getting so far, but it does follow a lot of speculation that Moscow may have offered him refuge this time because...
Yeah, when I say Afghanistan, I'm talking about the post-socialist government period, yes. That's precisely what I'm talking about. That's why I said it's almost a direct comparison. Because the USSR-aligned socialist Afghan government was being pretty fucking ruthless to the Muslims in the countryside. They were. They openly were insanely fucking violent. So people understandably had a reason to revolt. People had a real reason to fight back against. People had a real reason to fight back against the government. And then the USSR moved in and increased the brutality. All the while, America was pumping the forces that were fighting against the Afghan government and also the USSR with weapons training them, radicalizing them. And those forces would fight against one another as well. So we shall see.
About 7 to 10 days ago, there were a lot of rumours that he and his family were in Russia following the rebels' offensive in Aleppo. And those rumours were never confirmed, but it did fuel speculation, as I say, that Moscow may have offered him refuge this time following his disappearance and reports that he had fled the country. Russia, in a statement earlier today from the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs here, they said that they don't know where Assad is. They have no information on his location. They said all the information they gave was that he has departed office and that he has left the country following negotiations with a number of participants in the armed conflict. They said that they did not participate in those negotiations, but stressed that they had no idea where he was. But this report from TASS, state news agency here in Russia, does appear to contradict that, and it does, as I say, follow a lot of reports a week ago and rumours a week ago that he was also here. And this was one of the two likely destinations that he was assumed to have gone to, the other one being potentially Iran, Syria's other main ally. But as I say, this is still unconfirmed, but I think it does follow, as I say, a lot of rumours and a lot of speculation, and I think a lot of people would not be surprised if indeed he and his family were in the Russian capital.
Syrian rebel forces have now taken over Hama. That is the second major city they've captured since launching a surprise offensive last week. Syria's military says its troops had to withdraw from Hama after rebels entered several parts of the city in another blow to President Bashar al-Assad. Now, rebel fighters also freed hundreds of prisoners, saying they were all wrongfully detained. Some residents in Hama are now celebrating the rebel takeover.
Like, I'm not even saying that the Assad regime is good or that it's infinitely better than what is to come for Syria. I'm just understandably maybe a little critical of you know, the Al-Qaeda guy. I don't know. Is that crazy? Am I crazy for this? Yeah, no, Assad is a fucking ruthless despot, okay? He's a ruthless tyrant. And I still worry about what will happen to the Syrian population. I know that there's a lot who are understandably celebrating. Of course, this warrants celebration. If you can't go back to your country, if your fucking family members were unjustly prisoned and tortured, yeah, of course you're going to be fucking excited that the torturer is no longer in control.
Thank God, we've been waiting for this day for a long time, and we're all coming out on the street. This is the happiest day for us. We were afraid to go out at night. We've been waiting for this.
Feelings that can't be described. It's been 50 years we've been suffering injustice and crime and oppression. This is a historic moment, a priceless moment.
Priceless moment. Now, rebels are vowing to push further south to Homs. That is the next major city on the road to the capital, Damascus. CNN's Jemana Karatse sat down for an exclusive interview with the main rebel leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. He says the Assad regime is, in his words, dead, and explains how his forces have been able to sweep through Syria.
Taking Hama, after taking Aleppo, I mean, how significant is this for you right now?
From a military perspective, what comes after Hama will not be the same as what came before. However, I prefer not to be overly optimistic during the battle. I like to remain cautious and vigilant to avoid complacency and ensure we don't suffer losses while believing we are safe.
What comes after this? What's after Hama?
The course of the battle. As for the secrets of the battle, let's leave them to the unfolding events. You will witness them in reality, which is better than discussing them now.
In a matter of days, you have taken major cities. What's changed? How are you able to do this now?
In recent years, there has been a unification of internal opinions and the establishment of institutional structures within the liberated areas of Syria. This institutionalization included the restructuring within military factions. They entered unified training camps and developed a sense of discipline. This discipline allowed them, with God's guidance, to engage in a battle in an organized manner. The progress and execution of plans have been swift, with clear communication and adherence to commands. They stop where they should stop and withdraw where they should withdraw. The revolution has transitioned from chaos and randomness to a state of order, both in civil and institutional matters and in military operations alike.
Some believe this is happening because the allies of the Assad regime, the Russians, Hezbollah, Iran, that they're weakened, they're preoccupied with other wars. And this is why we are seeing this happen right now. And the Syrian regime itself weakened. Is this what is happening right now? Is this why you chose to launch this offensive right now?
As you know, we are still in the midst of the battle, and discussing such details at this time is not wise.
But you faced more of a resistance in Hama than you did in Aleppo. What do you think happened? Why did the regime withdraw like it did?
The seeds of the regime's defeat have always been within it. It has been effectively dead since that time. However, the Iranians attempted to revive the regime.
They hit him with a DEI rate. It's de-ISIS, okay? Listen, I'm going to be skeptical. While I share the enthusiasm that many Syrians experience, many Syrians feel on this day, understandably, given that the Assad regime has been toppled, you know, it's going to be a little bit harder. A couple CNN appearances where he looks like Zelensky is not going to make me forget, at the very least, that he is a Al-Qaeda guy. You know what I mean?
Regime buying it time, and later the Russians also try to prop it up. But the truth remains, this regime is dead.
In the last year, it seemed like Bashar al-Assad survived the war. He was welcomed back into the Arab fold and on the world stage.
The Arab countries' evaluation of the situation was mistaken.
How is he any different from a Hamas leader who seeks the freedom of Gaza? Both are fighting against oppressors, one internal and the other an occupier. Great question. Hamas leadership is almost entirely preoccupied with the end of the Israeli sovereignty over Palestinian lands. Salafists and Al-Qaeda style, ISIS style groupings in the region actually have expansionist interests beyond simply some kind of liberatory reasons. Hamas in and of itself is also, while its inception is, a Muslim Brotherhood cutout that was originally like an Islamic charity, the current leadership of Hamas is comprised of many different ideological backgrounds. It's not entirely like conservative Muslims. Many of them are, but their ultimate goal is not to institute, like they're not anti-Christian, for example. Like there are Christian Palestinians, they're not anti-Christian. Whereas I would say that these guys, at least in the way that they operated historically, were very much anti anyone that is not that does not abide by their version of Sunni Islam. Does that make sense? ISIS sees Syria as a base before expanding. Hamas sees Palestine as their home. Very different reasons for fighting. Yeah. Muslim Brotherhood is not remotely comparable to ISIS or Al-Qaeda. No, I'm not saying it's comparable. I'm stating that while the origination of Hamas comes from Islamist fundamentalists, like it's true, these guys are fundamentalists ideologically, okay? Their actions and their goals are entirely different. That is the reason why Jelani had to disavow not only his former acts, but also has had to say over and over again that they are no longer interested in global jihad. They are no longer interested in, fighting the West or fighting against any sort of like non-Sunni Muslim sect, or even Sunni Muslims, really, if they don't abide by the really aggressive, really rigorous mechanisms of control that they want to implement. You have to look at what is changed here. And if you want to understand what has changed here, okay, in his attitude, in the way that he presents himself, in his ideology, you'll probably develop a better understanding of like what my criticisms are, at least.
Some Arab countries try to separate the regime from Iran's project. This is impossible. Even if the regime wanted this, it can't implement it. It's a subservient relationship. Iran can disengage from the regime, but the regime can't. To describe the regime as victorious is deeply unjust to the many children, people, women subjected to rape in prisons, displaced individuals scattered across the world, those drowning in the seas, and those living in tents on the borders of other countries. What kind of victory are we talking about?
In the past, you have talked about strict Islamic rule. Is that still the plan?
People who fear Islamic governance either have seen incorrect implementations of it or do not understand it properly. We are talking about something that aligns with the traditions and nature of the region. The most important thing is to build institutions. We are not talking about rule by individuals or personal whims. It's about institutional governance. Syria deserves a governing system that is institutional, not one where a single ruler makes arbitrary decisions.
Many Syrians are happy and will be happy to see the end of the Assad regime, but they're also...
Yeah, he read Why Nations Fail, and you can tell. Okay, he is a firm and committed institutional defender. He has become a liberal institutionalist, yes. He's technically not wrong to the Oriental self-righteous r/atheism freaks in the chat, but he's also probably wrong because of his track record. Yeah, that's my only... Guys, there's a couple different things to take note of here. One, the reception overall of a guy like this after his track record, because he suits the purpose of you know, taking down, toppling a guy that America also didn't like in the region, okay? Was he worthy of toppling? Absolutely, okay? I'm not saying that Assad is a good dude at all. Having said that, however, the American media, it's interesting, at least for me, after the months and months, if not a year plus, many months of coverage over Hamas and other emancipatory groups and their broad reception in American media, or even Hezbollah, as a matter of fact, versus a guy like this. When you look at a guy like this and how quickly Western media will present him as a Zelensky-style person, a moderate with a deep, dark past that he has overcome and has changed his attitude on. I think it's important to take note of why Western media is so quick to recognize him as not a guy who was literally a fucking former Al-Qaeda ISIS guy, like a high-ranking Al-Qaeda guy, but instead as a moderate revolutionary figure that is abiding by the wishes of the Syrian population. That's important. I think that's important to understand. The other thing is like, the other thing for me at least is like, I'm going to be always a little bit skeptical of a guy like this. It's just, historically speaking, groups that America's aligned with, and I guess like the only group that I wouldn't say this for is the Syrian Defense Forces, and they are also obviously backed and trained by the American government. And yet I think that they are much more reasonable, much better overall than what this dude is doing or what this dude has done in general.
Worried about what HTS rule would mean, including minorities.
No one has the right to erase another group. These sects have coexisted in this region for hundreds of years, and no one has the right to eliminate them. There must be a legal framework that protects and ensures the rights of all, not a system that serves only one sect, as Assad's regime has done.
You know, listening to you speaking, you've gone through quite the transformation. Once an Al-Qaeda leader, your group has had affiliations with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS, and now you are projecting this image of a moderate leader and a moderate group What is HTS right now? ISIS, and now you are projecting this image of a moderate leader and a moderate group. What is HTS right now?
Hayat
Tahrir al-Sham is one of the factions in the region, just like all the others. Now we're talking about a larger project. We're talking about building Syria. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is merely one detail of this dialogue, and it may dissolve at any time. It's not an end in itself, but a means to perform a task confronting this regime. Once that task is complete, it will transition to a state of governance, institutions, and so on. I believe that everyone in life goes through phases and experiences, and these experiences naturally increase a person's awareness. A person in their 20s will have a different personality than someone in their 30s or 40s, and certainly someone in their 50s.
That's crazy, man. That's actually wild. He said it was just a phase. You know, my Al-Qaeda, you know, my Al-Qaeda moment was just a phase. The funniest part about this is that, like, there are groups in this region that Americans and Westerners broadly point to as like the most violent forms, and they paint the entirety of Islam with this broad brush. They say, oh, you like Hamas? Oh, you want to behead gay people and then throw them off rooftops? And it's like, and then there are dudes who have done that, and they're like, no, but those dudes have reformed. So what the fuck? It's just whoever is, you know, America's asset, whoever gets like positive coverage in the media, and you're just fine with that. That's it. I guess this is a Gen Z try to cancel Eminem moment. They're trying to cancel the ISIS guy, dude. But yeah, HTS is not even the only group here that is at play, that is a problem. There are obviously going to be a lot of issues between the Kurdish militias and the Turkish-backed militias. So that's a major issue as well. Why does Turkey have such a hard bone against Kurds that they won't leave the Syrian ones alone? There are a shit ton of Kurds as an ethnic minority in Turkey, and any sort of nation-state project for the 35 million ethnic Kurds that live in diaspora that don't have a nation-state for themselves is always going to be a significant threat, political threat internally. So for them, I think the Turkish government's interest is a Kurdish nation-state that they have designs for, rather than one that is backed by America, like an American Israel, but for Kurds. So that is, you know, they will consistently continue to dominate all of the areas where Kurds live. And that's it. What? ISIS cannot be compared to HTS or any other group in the region. ISIS has no desire to nation build. This is such a funny thing to say because, like, I mean, ISIS tried to do a fucking nationalized healthcare system too. That doesn't change their brutality. You know what I mean? Like, I remember a time when ISIS literally stole the NHS logo when they were trying to do woke NHS. Yes, they are a violent, expansionist militia, incredibly violent. But to say that they have no interest in like nation building, you just don't agree with it, and I don't either. But you know, the name Islamic State is literally in the name. The second S is state. That's what the first S comes from. The second letter in ISIS is literally state.
Are those days behind you?
Sometimes it's essential to adjust to reality, and because someone who rigidly clings to certain ideas and principles without flexibility cannot effectively lead societies or navigate complex conflicts like the one happening in Syria.
People listening to this are going to wonder why they should believe you. You are still a specially designated global terrorist by the United States with a $10 million bounty on your head. Your group is a prescribed terrorist organization by the United States, by the UN, by the EU, and others.
I say to people, don't judge by words, but by actions. I believe the reality speaks for itself. These classifications are primarily political and at the same time wrong. I define a terrorist as someone who intentionally kills civilians, harms innocents, or displaces people.
Like, no follow-up to that. Like, okay, well, what about your actions that was just that? It's crazy. He sounds like me, bro. He said we must preserve these institutions. Like, there's no way that you can operate without good governance. We will cease to exist if necessary. Also, terrorism is a political classification, is a political designation, and that is oftentimes unjustly given to non-state actors that happen to be outside of the periphery of American State Department interests, which is hilarious because now that he is in the American State Department interests, more openly at least, now there's no reason to utilize like a cutout or anything like that, and they can directly just take him off the terrorist list. Yeah, he's like a Hasanabi head.
If we're being honest, many of the wars waged by major powers in Arab, Muslim, and even non-Muslim countries have involved the deliberate killing of thousands, the destruction of homes, and the displacement of millions. Even the regime itself is guilty of such actions.
But the US and others would say is that you were parts of groups that did exactly that.
Personally, I have not done these things. The situation must be understood in its historical context. There was a massive war in Iraq that deeply stirred people's emotions, prompting many to go there. The circumstances of that war led people to various places, and my path led me to one of those locations. Given my level of awareness and my young age at the time, my actions evolved to where I am today. I didn't go to Iraq with those intentions. I went to defend the Iraqi people. When I returned to Syria, I didn't want to bring what happened in Iraq into Syria. That's why there were disagreements between us and ISIS.
People would be wondering why you've agreed to speak with us.
What is happening in Syria is significant for the entire world. This event has positive repercussions globally because under the regime's rule, Syria became a source of concern and trouble for everyone. Stabilizing Syria will bring many people back. Today, in the liberated areas, about 1/3 of the population lives in camps, approximately 1.5 million people. I believe we can soon reach a point where there are no camps. With the rehabilitation of the liberated areas, people will return to their homes. Many refugees in Turkey will likely return, as will a significant number of refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. Even refugees in Europe may return to rebuild their country.
I know this is an ignorant question, but why is the Western media so understanding and willing to platform al-Jilani even though they generally categorize Arabs as less than human, especially Palestinians as the last year? What is an exception for the West? Isn't there some point when the fundamental disagreements of the West and people like al-Jilani trump their common ground? No. Islamophobia doesn't factor into this equation. Like, even people who are still Islamophobic will be like, no, these are the good guys, though. This is why I constantly try to explain how consent is manufactured. Okay? These guys provide utility for American interests. And therefore, the American media has much more understanding, okay? They consider their former actions as shortcomings, that they are actually, they're reformed now. No such attitude exists for those who are against America or America's allies. I'll give you one example. Hamas's founding charter had a whole bunch of anti-Semitic nonsense in it. I believe it was in 1988 when they wrote the original charter. It had a sea of not only anti-Israel, but like anti-Jewish statements involved in it. In 2017, Hamas actually changed this charter because they wanted to get international recognition. They said that it was not reflective of their values in general, and they hadn't really touched their charter from the jump. So they decided we're going to be more reasonable in our governance, and also we are going to change the structure of our charter, change it in its entirety. In 2017, they reformed and wrote a new charter that completely carved out completely cut out all the anti-Semitic shit and basically said, this is just about Israel, yada, yada, yada. Okay? Now, you don't have to agree. You don't have to believe that. Okay? You don't have to believe that at all. But the reality of the matter is, if Hamas was not against Israel and an emancipatory movement that is born out of his the people's desire to live free of Israeli sovereignty, live free of this apartheid, live free of this occupation, and instead was, I don't know, a militia group that you could use against America's enemies in the region, okay, then American media would reflect that change. Okay, they would talk about it all the time. But they don't. It's just something to pay attention to. And the very same people that will say, like, Hamas are barbaric, rapist, monster terrorists with an antiquated anti-Semitism, and they're operating on the basis of just like doing anti-Semitic acts and not necessarily like a real emancipatory struggle whatsoever, are the very same people who will turn around and say, no, Golani is actually the GOAT. He's incredible. He's a fantastic fighter. And that, the Assad government was ruthless, which is true. They were brutal. The Assad government was brutal. Okay. And certainly not just to like, radical Islamist fundamentalists or anything like that. I'm simply stating that I am still very much worried. And it's not just Jelani either. My fears are not specifically around Jelani. I think that it's good that many Syrians now feel that they can go back to Syria to be with their families. That's a fucking fantastic thing. That's an incredible thing. It's an incredible moment. It's worthy of celebration. Having said that, however, I don't think the strife is over and the conflict is over. With the recent collapse of the Assad regime in Syria, the game changes dramatically. It's a big loss for Russia and Iran, which is good. However, the jihadist forces that have replaced Assad create major problems for Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. As to the U.S. interest in Syria, there are over 50,000 ISIS prisoners primarily being held by the Kurdish forces while President Trump destroyed the caliphate. These ISIS fighters planned and executed plots against the American homeland and our allies. A breakout and reestablishment of ISIS is a major threat to the U.S. and our friends. Obama and Biden got this wrong big time, requiring President Trump to clean up their mess. I like that we're basically setting it up as a potential pretext to, re-invade or to full-blown invade.
What happened in the Middle East? After 13 years of civil war in Syria, more than half a century of brutal authoritarian rule by Bashar Assad and his father before him, rebel forces have forced Assad to resign his office and flee the country. We're not sure where he is, but there's word that he's in Moscow. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. This regime brutalized and tortured and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. As we all turn to the question of what comes next, the United States will work with our partners and the stakeholders in Syria to help them seize an opportunity to manage the risks. For years, the main backers of Assad have been Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. But over the last week, their support collapsed, all three of them, because all three of them are far weaker today than they were when I took office. And let's remember why. After Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, when much of the world responded with horror, Iran and its proxies chose to launch a multi-front war against Israel. That was a historic mistake on Iran's part. Today, Iran's main territorial proxy, Hezbollah, is also on its back. Only 12 days ago, I spoke from the Rose Garden about the ceasefire deal in Lebanon, a deal that was only possible because Hezbollah has been badly degraded. Meanwhile, Hamas has been badly degraded as well. Iran's own military capabilities have been weakened. Iran tried 2 times to attack Israel, and the United States and build a coalition of countries to directly defend Israel and help defeat those attacks. All this made possible for Iran and Hezbollah to continue to prop up, impossible, I should say, for them to prop up the Assad regime. Additionally, Russia's support for Assad also failed. And that's because Ukraine, backed by our American allies, has put up a wall of resistance against the invading Russian forces, inflicting massive damage on the Russian forces. And that has left Russia unable to protect its main ally in the Middle East. Excuse my cold. The upshot for all this is, for the first time ever, neither Russia, nor Iran, nor Hezbollah could defend this abhorrent regime in Syria. And this is a direct result of the blows that Ukraine, Israel, have delivered upon their own self-defense with unflagging support of the United States. Over the past 4 years, my administration pursued a clear and principled policy towards Syria. First, we made clear from the start sanctions on Assad would remain in place unless he engaged seriously in a political process to end the civil war, as outlined by the UN Security Council resolution passed in 2015. But Assad refused, so we carried out a comprehensive sanction program against him and all those responsible for atrocities against the Syrian people. Second, we maintained our military presence in Syria, our counter-ISIS, to counter the support of local partners as well on the ground, their partners, never ceding an inch of territory, taking out leaders of ISIS, ensuring that ISIS can never establish a safe haven there again. Third, we've supported Israel's freedom of action against Iranian networks in Syria, against actors aligned with Iran who transported lethal aid to Lebanon. And when necessary, ordered the use of military force against Iranian networks to protect U.S. forces. Our approach has shifted the balance of power in the Middle East. Through this combination of support for our partners, sanctions, and diplomacy, and targeted military force when necessary, we now see new opportunities opening up for the people of Syria and for the entire region. Looking ahead, the United States will do the following. First, we'll support Syria's neighbors, including Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Israel, should any threat arise from Syria during this period of transition. I will speak with leaders of the region in the coming days. I had long discussions with all of our people earlier this morning. And I'll send senior...
I can't tell if his liver is failing and that's why he's so yellow, if it's the lighting, or he's been getting some tan. But yeah, that's the foreign policy goat right there, chat. You want to know the real foreign policy goat? There it is.
Liderler arasında zaten 2 kişi kaldık.
There are only 2 people left among the leaders in the world.
Şu anda ben varım.
Just me.
Bir de Vladimir Putin var.
And Vladimir Putin.
Yani bunu ben olduğum için söylemiyorum. Yani vakayı söylüyorum.
He's saying, I'm not just saying this because it's me. I'm just telling you how it is.
Tabii 22 yıl bu fakirin görev süresi var.
For 22 years, I've been working.
Neredeyse bir o kadar da Sayın Putin'in var. Diğerleri hepsi elimine oldu.
Yeah, Putin's also done that. Everyone else has been either eliminated or they've left.
Şu anda tabii süreç devam ediyor. Temennimiz odur ki bu münasebetleri bu diyalog içerisinde sürdürmeye devam edelim. Tabii Merkel'in Almanya siyasetinde onulmaz bir yeri vardı.
Saying Merkel is irreplaceable in German politics.
Merkel gittikten sonra Almanya'da siyaset bitti.
He says, after Merkel leaves, politics ended in Germany. That's what he said.
Çok ilginçtir. Ama ben Almanya'da mesela çok takdir ettiğim, hatta daha ileri gideceğim, sevdiğim bir lider.
He says there is a leader in Germany that I actually appreciate. Dare I take it one step further? Love.
Schröder'dir.
Schroeder. Who I think is, Gerhard Schroeder, who in Germany does not enjoy his high standing in popular contest, although it was the economic reforms initiated during his reign from which the Merkel administration has massively benefited later on. So interesting remark.
Schroeder'in bize karşı olan saygısı çok.
He's saying Schroeder has a lot of respect for us. It's kind of funny because, like, for him, everything revolves around respect for Turkey. Is Turkey at the table? Is Turkey the table? And for the record, this past week has shown Turkey is the entire table. Not just at the table. Turkey is literally the fucking table, and they just flipped the table. Yeah. Yes, Turkey does have free healthcare. Turkey has a nationalized healthcare system alongside a private insurance, if you would like, as well.
Çok farklıydı ve hakikaten iyi bir liderdi.
He's saying Schroeder was different and very good.
Münasebetleri çok farklıydı. Ve Ramazan'da mesela benim oturduğum masada Schroeder bira filan içmezdi.
He's saying during Ramadan, Schroeder used to respect him and wouldn't drink beer at the same table that he was sitting at during Ramadan. Again, everything revolves around his own. Everything here, his entire analysis is conducted on the virtue of, do they respect me or not?
Böyle saygısı olan bir insandı. Farklı bir insandı.
He's a different guy. He had a lot of respect.
Bizim mesela Schroeder'le şu anda hala.
Okay, he's just still glazing Schroeder. I don't really care. The important part about it was when he said, it's just me and Vladimir Putin. We're the only two fucking leaders. No one else. And he also pointed to his longevity. Yesterday, one moderate rebel leader gave a nice speech. Oh, this is gray zone, so I don't know. Aleppo's Al Ravda Mosque, promising that the Harmony residents, even if they're from any other Muslim sect or Christians or Armenians, today they uploaded a new video showing them beating defenseless Kurds. Yeah, I don't know when that video is from, but I do know that they're already fighting. There is already some infighting happening. U.S. forces conducted over 75 precision airstrikes in central Syria, targeting ISIS camps and operatives. CENTCOM vows to prevent ISIS from reconstituting or conducting external operations. Also, Israel has, this is sourced by the New York Times, Israeli ground forces passed the demilitarized zone and crossed into Syrian territory for the first time since 1973, Israeli officials say, according to the New York Times. Israeli ground forces advanced beyond the demilitarized zone on the Syria-Israel border over the weekend, marking their first overt entry into Syrian territory since the 1973 October War, according to two Israeli officials speaking anonymously to discuss sensitive developments. The Israeli deployment came amid a successful push by rebel groups in Syria to drive President Bashar al-Assad out of power and out of the country, prompting neighboring states to brace for more regional instability created by the southern fall and fight. Now, what I don't understand is Israel has collaborated on that same fucking border with al-Nusra in the past, like directly. When, what was the border scuffle that they had? Or not scuffle, but like Israel, al-Nusra collaboration. Let's see. I mean, this is from Al Monitor, but this was the Israel and Jabhat al-Nusra coordinating on attacks in Syria. Israel has arrested a Syrian Druze man who documented contact between Israel and the al-Nusra front. Israel offered medical help to fighters as well. So why am I mentioning this? They have also given weapons. IDF chief finally acknowledges that Israel supplied weapons to Syrian rebels. Outgoing IDF chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot this weekend acknowledged for the first time that Israel has indeed provided weaponry to Syrian rebel groups in the Golan Heights during the country's 7-year civil war. Until Sunday, Israel would say officially only that it had given humanitarian aid to Syrian opposition groups across the border, while denying or refusing to comment on reports that it had supplied them with arms as well. So what's really interesting about this is, well, they have collaborated with al-Nusra in the past. They have collaborated with, like, HSD style groups. Okay, maybe not directly with HSD, but I would assume, HTS. What I don't understand is why, if they have collaborated with al-Nusra, and they're saying Israel Prime Minister helped topple Assad, but it wasn't planned. It just happened to be, kismet, right? And then why are they invading Syria? Why are they going further into Syria? The Israeli deployment came amid a successful push by rebel groups in Syria to drive President Bashar al-Assad out of power. Why are they doing that? If they were so worried about, the groups that come after, this is the peak. Groups that Israel has worked with, successfully collaborated with openly. They are now in charge of large swaths of the Syrian lands. So why is it that Israel now has additional security concerns? It's very interesting. One statement, two languages. There's one statement. There's one sentence that's pretty important that Netanyahu says only in English, not at all in Hebrew, about the presence of IDF in the buffer zone. This is a temporary defense position until a sustainable arrangement is found.
The army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Equally, we send a hand of peace. The Syrian army...
Interesting.
Israel, which borders Syria, it has deployed additional forces to the occupied Golan.
I just don't personally understand why there would be any additional temporary threats to Israeli sovereignty and security if the guys that they have in the past aligned with are now in control and Assad is gone. I thought Assad was the dangerous threat to Israel's sovereignty and security. And yet, for some reason, Israel's temporary security concerns have once again reared its ugly head. Israel always has temporary security concerns. Israel always has a right to defend itself. This is how Israel basically traffics its own expansionist policies. And that's precisely what's happening here. Anyway, from what I understand, here is obviously our Yemen researcher, Alden Markey. I don't know if he's in the chat right now. He says, now that Assad's government has officially collapsed and he has fled Syria, Yemen can now finally address in public what happened to its Syrian embassy. Assad closed the pro-Ansar Allah embassy in Damascus in October 2023 in exchange for rapprochement with Saudi Arabia. The entire embassy staff was kicked out and the embassy premises and promptly replaced with stooges of the pro-Saudi Yemeni regime in exile. I happen to speak very cordially with both of the two Yemeni ambassadors before Assad turned everything to shit. The October 2023 closure was very embarrassing and bewildering. There was no prior notice, nothing.
Golan Heights area, and during the last year is understood to have carried out several airstrikes on groups which support Hamas and Hezbollah as its wars in Gaza and then Lebanon were underway. The Israeli military is also reported to have struck Syrian military compounds near Damascus early today, including weapons depots. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted these comments on the fall of the Assad regime in Syria to his social media accounts.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah in Iran.
I also do hate that he's so happy about this. Like, it does benefit him. Instability in the axis of resistance supply chain, regardless of Assad's lack of interest in helping Palestinians, instability in the axis of resistance supply chain is good for Israel. So for him, this is fantastic. They've crippled Hezbollah's leadership. They've bombed every fucking, Shia village in southern Lebanon. So now the Lebanese economy is already destroyed. And now they have to do a period of reconstruction to make sure that they, to make sure that that people can still survive in that area. And now the last vector of instability, a massive country in the region that was utilized as a part of the Iranian supply chain, is no longer controlled by a guy who is somewhat unstable from his perspective.
Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found.
Soon before Erdogan's assault in Syria, Netanyahu literally threatened Assad and his beast, saying he's playing with fire. Yeah, because Erdogan and Benjamin Netanyahu are this, bro. This. They are. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is a servant of Western interests. It does not matter that he plays both sides. It does not matter that he has trade relations with Russia. It doesn't matter that he has trade relations with China. Recep Tayyip Erdogan oversees the second largest military in NATO. Recep Tayyip Erdogan oversees America's nuclear arsenal in the Incirlik base. Anyone that tries to tell you that Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Benjamin Netanyahu are not directly aligned only hear what he has to say in public, and he has all the smoke for Israel in public. He always says, like, fuck you, Israel. You are Netanyahu. He says a number of different things. And yet, the oil and gas that Israel needs to power its energy grid, I believe around 30% of it still comes through Azerbaijan, through Turkish ports, directly into Israeli ports, or directly through pipelines. Okay? Israel uses a radar in Turkey to protect the sky, that too. Turkey has also always trained Israeli Air Force fighters. No matter what happens, no matter who's in charge, as long as Turkey is a NATO nation, it will always be pro-America, and obviously America's major interests in the region are to defend Israel unconditionally. But this is very beneficial for Erdogan in general. Not only does he get to enjoy the freedom, he gets to, I don't know, bully like European allies every now and then. And also simultaneously, he gets to pummel Kurdish forces in northern Syria and maintain control over big parts of Syria. And that benefit is now playing itself out in the way that the Assad regime was toppled by Turkish-backed forces. So there it is. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has played both sides, and he has ultimately come out on top.
Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border.
Well, that was Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, let me go now to Charles Lister, who is in Doha. Sorry, we're going to go to our guest in a moment. First of all, let's hear from John Donaldson, who's got this analysis of Netanyahu's statement from Jerusalem.
It's funny to see cabinet ministers saying this occupied region is a security belt from Syria to the Golan Heights, because the whole justification for occupying it, yeah, exactly. The whole justification for occupying and annexing the Golan Heights is that Golan Heights is a security belt for northern Israel. We're doing security belt inception. No, it's the same tactic. It's always the same tactic. You go in, you say, we have real security concerns. We have people living there. We have real security concerns. We have to push the boundary. Then you annex that boundary that you pushed. Okay? Then you repopulate that area. You repopulate the area with more settlers. Then now you have security concerns. You have to expand further. Okay? In the words of that other guy who wrote the Times of Israel article before they took it down, Lebensraum. That was literally the fucking argument that the dude was making. Yeah. Amid the chaos, the Israeli Air Force carried out numerous strikes in Syria today, taking out weaponry Israel fears could fall in the hands of hostile forces. According to the reports in Syria, strikes earlier targeted ammunition and weapons depots at the Kalkala Air Base in Suwaida, several sites in the Daraa Governorate, and the Mezze Air Base in Damascus. This afternoon, additional strikes were reported at the Mezze Air Base, a major security complex in the Kafr Souza suburb of the capital, a branch of the Scientific Studies and Research Center in Damascus, and a central square in the capital that includes intelligence and customs headquarters. This is from Times of Israel military correspondent Manny Fabian. Following the fall of the Assad regime, the IDF has said that it is tracking advanced weapons in Syria and working to prevent them from reaching Hezbollah or any other hostile elements that could threaten Israel. So yes, this is absolutely working in favor of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, look, after the last 14 months, Israel has a lot on its plate, but it is definitely concerned about what's happening in Syria. And I think this, basically, they are saying that They are going to seize this buffer zone that has existed between the Golan Heights and occupied Golan Heights in Syria. They're going to seize those positions. And I think ordinarily that would have been seen as hugely provocative, but certainly from Israel's perspective at the moment, it is understandable. I mean,
someone look up a map of Greater Israel and you will understand which direction people are heading in. Now, if you were to say this, for the record, if you were to say this like, I don't know, 10 fucking years ago, I think that there was more of a reason to be skeptical of that. If someone were to be like, oh, they want to do Greater Israel, they want to do Greater Israel, I'd be like, I don't know. Okay? I don't know about that. Nowadays, I feel like, I mean, look, Euphrates to the Nile. Look at that. This guy is not a random dipshit, okay? I mean, he is a dipshit, but he's not a random dipshit. That is the finance minister of Israel, Bezalel Smotrich, describing the aspirations of Greater Israel. Yes, the Nile River, in between the Nile River and the Euphrates. This is the map of Greater Israel. Sometimes you'll see this patch on soldiers' arms on the Israeli occupying force. It happens to feature most of Syria, half of Iraq, all of Jordan, all of Lebanon, parts of Turkey as well. This is what it looks like in terms of the patches. Parts of, obviously, Egypt too. Yeah. I believe it's also in the Likud Charter too. Yeah, also Saudi Arabia to a certain, Saudi Arabia too. So where does this originate from? I think it originates, I don't know. I mean, it's like the Bible, I think. I don't fucking know. Well, for evangelical Christians, they believe that the Greater Israel, like this land between the Euphrates and the Nile River, belongs to only Jews. And when it is only populated by Jews, they will, the Armageddon will happen. Jesus Christ will come back to Megiddo and fight Satan's forces in Megiddo, and all of the evangelical Christians will be sucked into the heavens, and everyone else that is not a good evangelical Christian will burn in eternal hell. This, of course, includes the Jews that are in between that area, but the trigger event is for them to populate this entire area so that this anime supervillain style fight can happen. Yeah. I think they're mostly focusing on their political capital on northern Gaza as far as settlements go at the moment. Some groups do photo shoots in southern Lebanon and left, but northern Gaza and the Netzarim corridor are where our eyes should aim at right now as far as that goes. Yes. I mean, I think like the reasonable thing, well, it's still unreasonable, but what they will be allowed to do is most likely populate North Gaza. As I have said, as they've shown their interest in bringing in settlers and utilizing the occupied or the currently ethnically cleansed parts of North Gaza and repopulate it with settlers. So they're already doing that. Yeah, they're very anti-Semitic. They believe half the Jews will be converted and the other half will be destroyed on Judgment Day. Yeah, I mean, one of the main guys that believes that is Pastor John Hagee, who once famously said that the Holocaust was good because it was a trigger event for Israel, and that Hitler was actually Jewish as well. He was the Antichrist and Jewish. That's what he said. Pastor John Hagee.
They are very concerned about who these rebels are. They're concerned about falling into the wrong hands, and they don't want the rebels operating right on their border. So, you know, look,
this is bullshit. They didn't have rebels operating right in their border as a concern at all before. They literally welcomed it. Okay? So the notion that they now have an issue with the rebels operating on the border is bullshit. Here is senior editor of 972 magazine, okay, Ben Reif. With Assad gone, Israeli forces are currently seizing the buffer zone between Syria and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, which has been in place for half a century. The army has also been instructed to occupy control points, while ministers are calling to occupy Mount Hermon. Saudi media is reporting that the Syrian side of Mount Hermon, Jabal al-Shaikh, is now under Israeli control. And there it is. They got the flag out and everything.
Look, Israel is fighting wars in Gaza. The one in Lebanon has only just finished, but it does seem like it's willing to engage with Syria as well. We've just had a note from the IDF warning people in 5 villages in southern Syria to stay indoors for their own safety because Israel could be preparing to make strikes there. Israel has had a very ambiguous relationship with the Syrian regime up until now, and it's one that really indicates the complex web of networks and political allegiances in the region. So for a long time, after the Arab uprising in Syria back in 2011, 2012, Israel basically wanted the status quo. They're no great friend of Bashar al-Assad, but they calculated that a man who was allied with Hezbollah, a man who was allied with Iran, Israel's 2 arguably greatest enemies along with Hamas, they calculated that Bashar al-Assad was better than what might come next. Well, now we've got what's come next, and Israel is going to have to make the calculation of what kind of Syria it wants, and if they don't get the Syria they want, how will they respond?
Bombing Damascus, taking a photo with the Israeli flag on Syrian territory is a provocative way to greet the new regime on its first day. I assume the Israeli decision makers have already calculated that they can't have peace with any regime in Syria and are sending a message. I mean, I think they're just flexing. How the fuck does a whole ass country fall in a single week? I mean, it was already held together with ticker tape, if that makes sense. It wasn't, there has always been, at least for the past decade, there's been like a very strong, resilient anti-government movement in the country. There's a shit ton of Western efforts, Western involvement that propped up some of these groups and armed them. You have a massive country that is a border nation to you, and I'm not even talking about Israel here, that has also consistently utilized its own militia forces inside of your borders.
Moments ago,
we're going to see what the CNN crew said in Syria after the Assad regime fell.
Spoke to us from inside the Syrian capital of Damascus. Here is some of what she told us.
It's a little bit eerie, certainly, and there's definitely a sense when you talk to people that they're delighted, but they're cautious, they're concerned. What comes next? Will there
Yeah. Why are they cautious and concerned?
be chaos? Will there be lawlessness? Will we see more looting like we saw today? But if you have that other clip pulled up, I just would love our viewers to be able to see the scene at that border crossing as we pass through it. Again, it was already dark, already past curfew, very, very quiet.
An HTS militant in Damascus says we will declare an Islamic caliphate and pledge allegiance to the Muslim caliph in order to fight the Jews. Yeah, right, dude. Sure. There's got to be someone who's like pro-Assad that's claiming that. And I don't mean that they're not like anti-Semitic or whatever. I'm sure plenty are. But they will never, I don't think they'll fight Israel at all. You're out of your fucking mind if you think that they're going to fight Israel. Once again, Israel has strategically offered support to al-Nusra in the past. That's just not a real thing.
Quiet and just nothing like we've seen it before. The only real evidence we saw, Wolf, of any struggle to finally take Damascus, to finally oust Bashar al-Assad, was a tank in the road below a torn poster of President, or I should say former President Bashar al-Assad. Take a look at that clip if you can. So we're just crossing now into Syria. It's astonishing to see. It's absolutely empty. The border points before, there would have been soldiers, there would have been border guards. Now there is absolutely nobody from the Syrian regime. Just a few friendly people waving us through. And honestly, the last time I came down this road was back in 2011. I was leaving Syria. I had been undercover in Damascus, posing as a tourist, went back into Lebanon, and I never went.
The chief of staff of the Israeli occupation forces, Herzi Halevi, announced that starting Sunday night, the IOF will begin combat operations in Syria. Aldon Markey says Jelani now has a chance to prove the national character of himself and his forces. No. And this would be tremendously beneficial for him. If he wants regional recognition, look at what the Ansar Allah administration got in terms of positive coverage from the entire region. because of their blockade on the Red Sea and because of their military campaign against Israel. If there is no easier way to gain immediate legitimacy other than in the region, other than attacking Israel immediately. The reality of the matter is he will not do that. He just will not. There is no way. Even if it would be beneficial for them, it would ultimately be very harmful for them if their interest is to control Syria. America will never allow a hostile entity to control Syria.
Imagine this moment will come when we will be driving through this border with no one from the regime to stop us. And Wolf, my cameraman, Scott McWhinney, just found this on the ground, literally, as we were listening to that clip. This is the old flag of the Syrian regime, which has 2 green stars. The rebels' flag has 3 green stars, but this one has now been, literally, we just found it on the floor. I guess a real moment where you see how much things have changed just in the past 24 hours. In terms of the security situation on the streets, I would just add, we anticipated that we might see quite a lot of checkpoints as we came into the city. We didn't. We did see a group of men. They did not appear to be armed, but they asked us what we were doing, where we were going. And now that we are sort of ensconced in our place where we're staying for the night, we have seen a couple of patrols. I saw 2 men armed, and I went up to them and asked them where they were from. They told me they were from Idlib, which is in the northern part of the country. And we saw a man on the street go up and wanted to pose for a photograph of them, which I think sort of speaks to the moment. There is obviously jubilation, elation, but also this sense of you can't compute. It was so fast, so breathtaking. It's astonishing. And I think people are taking some time to try to process the magnitude. Keep in mind, Wolf, we're talking about 53 years of Assad rule, 53 years of a brutal police state. And I can't tell you how many Syrians have said to me, Wolf, that, we understand that there are concerns about the rebels and the makeup of the rebels and the fact that some of them are Islamists and some of them are even jihadists or have been affiliated with Al-Qaeda or prescribed organizations. But let us have this moment. Let us celebrate the fact that this brutal dictator who has ruthlessly killed hundreds of thousands of people, who has gassed children with lethal nerve agents, who has
Syrian rebel commander urges Israel to support uprising, strike Iran-backed forces. In an interview with Tal, a fierce Syrian army officer expresses hope for friendly relations with Jewish state, warns of Iranian militias propping up Assad. They will come for Israel too. Yeah, anyone that thinks that these guys are going to fucking attack Israel, at least in the next 4 to 5 years, are crazy, in my opinion. I think, at most, this will be like a 9/11 style situation against America, more likely, and maybe even Israel, perhaps. Right? But I do not foresee this. I do not foresee this becoming a immediate, we took control over Syria, and now we're going to use that control to attack Israel. Yeah. All right, let's continue.
Locked people in prisons and tortured and beaten them to death, that he is finally gone. And that whatever may come, and whatever the anxiety, this is a new chapter for Syria, Wolf.
Clarissa Ward now having made her way to Damascus, the Syrian capital. Clarissa, thank you very much. I want to bring in CNN's international diplomatic editor, Nick Robertson, right now. He's done a lot of reporting from Syria and the Middle East over the years. Nick, what do we know, first of all, about this transition of power in Syria right now?
Yeah, risk and opportunity is sort of the way that President Biden spoke about it in his speech there. He mentioned being vigilant, and he said that because we've heard, he said, what the rebel leadership who had its roots in Al-Qaeda, we've heard what they're saying. It sounds like it's good. They're talking about a non-sectarian society with a new political dispensation. And this is something that President Biden said they need to live up to. We've heard the words, but we need to see more. And what President Biden laid out that he expects is in the future is a Syria that's sovereign and independent, which seems to be a very clear message, crystal clear. Russia and Iran will no longer have any kind of stake in the future of Syria. So that's part of the political picture going forward. It's made up of the different ethnic groups. It's made up of the different religious groups. It's made up of all the different elements of society inside of Syria. That's President Biden's aspiration. And that's very much what we've been hearing from the rebels. And I've been talking to actually a political grouping way outside of the rebel structure who were central to peace talks back with Assad's regime. And about a decade ago, the United States was playing a role in that. And there was a lot of work laid out back then for what a new government could look like, what a new constitution could look like, who could be involved in it. And this political leader told me that's the direction he believes that the country is headed in again, a period of military security, the military pull back. There's a power sharing government for a period of time, 6 to 9 months perhaps, he outlined, and then elections. And this really fits in with what President Biden was saying, that this new Syria will have a new constitution. Some of that's been drafted in the past, and a new government, the plans to get that new government and achieve it have been made there. But President Biden being very clear that ISIS will not be allowed to fill a vacuum. U.S. strikes on ISIS today. The security...
No. The other ISIS will not. If you're reformed ISIS, then you're fine.
Of U.S. forces vitally important, but also making sure that ISIS doesn't get stronger, and remembering that there are hundreds and thousands of ISIS families and supporters in jails inside of Syria today, in the rebel-held areas in the east, that the United States supports and helps keep them controlled. That will be vital to oversee going forward, and that is going to be of strategic importance to the United States. So that's the path that he's setting out. The rebels are setting out a path of change, no longer brutality, political, religious plurality.
Nick, I want you and our viewers to listen to what the rebel leader who led this revolt against Bashar al-Assad's regime said just a short time ago. Listen to this.
This victory, my brothers, is a victory for the entire Islamic nation. This new triumph, my brothers, marks a new chapter in the history of the region, a history fraught with dangers. Leaving Syria as a playground for Iranian ambitions, spreading sectarianism, stirring corruption, it became the world's leading source of Captagon. But today, Syria is being purified by the grace of God Almighty and through the efforts of the Heroic Mujahideen.
So, Nick, does that speech give us some insight on what could happen next now that these rebel groups are in control?
Yes, it does. You would expect, and this is what we've heard here, in any speech, he's essentially going to thank his supporters, which is the Islamist fighters who've been part of this coalition of rebel groups. And that's what he said. This is, and let's not forget the context of where he was. This is this mosque, the Umayyad Mosque, is in the heart of Damascus. It's an ancient and frankly very beautiful building in old stone, and it is sort of, if you will, the one place you would expect him to go and give a speech for an Islamist leader in the most venerated mosque in Syria. In that context, he speaks to the people who got him to power and got him to Damascus. But he also speaks about no longer for Iran to have an interest. I think that very clearly sort of talks and speaks to the negative interference that he sees Iran has played in Syria, but also to its Shia faith. He's a Sunni.
It'll never not be funny to me that the media was so quick to be like, Hamas is ISIS. But then when you have literally ISIS guys, they're like, those guys are no longer ISIS. They're rebels. They're moderate rebels, former jihadi. rebels. It's like, it's a super simple mechanism. It's like enemy, bad guy. Friend, good guy. It doesn't matter.
There's a difference. But when he speaks about Captagon, that's a message to leaders in the region. Captagon, the drug, has been an absolutely pernicious and deadly impact on the countries in the region, from Jordan to Saudi Arabia. They all want to see an end to that production. It's damaging their societies. The money of it's kept Assad in power. And when he says that, what Giuliani is doing is speaking to the leaders in the region who will help continue to keep him in power. So he's talked to the people that have brought him to a place of power, and he's talking regionally to those who he hopes can help keep him in power, Wolf.
And this new group, this group, HTS, not necessarily a new group, but clearly a very powerful group right now, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is in charge. They've taken over for Bashar al-Assad's regime. Nick Robertson reporting for us. Thank you very, very much.
Breaking news on Syria, and this time related to Israel. And Israeli airstrikes are being reported by Reuters, saying
this is a real brave mujahideen moment. It's crazy. All right, I'm going to move on to the CEO murder suspect. As you guys know, there's more updates on this issue. This is a story that we've been following closely. First, I'm going to start off by covering what Bill Burr had to say. All right. Let's see what Bill Burr had to say.
About that dude. You know what's funny? I was sitting there reading an article, a guy. They go, "Oh my God, he's such a great guy. He had a wife and kids, and he's such a great guy." And then you find out he and the other guys he's working for are getting sued for $121 million for dumping a stock and not letting the other people know.
In the lawsuit, he and multiple other United Health executives are accused of offloading something like 15 million shares of stock.
It's like, there's your motive. Nancy Pelosi just made $9 million on some shit.
Nancy Pelosi's stock trades saw a 65% return last year. This comes as Congress has stalled talks on banning lawmakers from trading stocks.
They're gangsters, dude. Fucking gangsters. And then when one of them gets whacked or something, they're like, "Oh my God, he was such a good guy." It's a dirty game, Paul. Healthcare.
He's right. As you guys remember, he had that famous take about there's a guy at Nestle that's in charge of privatizing water. He said a lot more aggressive things than I have in the past. All right? That's all I'm going to say. But he's right. They are gangsters. All right, let's take a look at what happened.
The gunman who shot and killed the CEO of United Healthcare continues this morning. The NYPD has been putting out photos of that suspect last night. They are new pictures here. Eyewitness News reporter Morgan Norwood joins us live from Washington Heights with the very latest at this hour. Good morning, Morgan.
Hi, Pedro. Yes, police have these new photos of the suspect. They also have what they think is his backpack, a bizarre piece of evidence found inside. I'll get to that part in just a second, but I do want the public to see these photos. It's the suspect in a cab moments after the murder, and authorities believe that he was headed here to this bus terminal here in Washington Heights, where he boarded a bus out of the city. He's wearing what appears to be a different jacket than what we've seen.
Bro, this guy has jackets for days, chat. Also, I don't want to be that guy, but I feel like this is 3 separate guys at this point. Because, like, his fucking eyebrows are different in every photo, dude. This is the 3rd photo. This is the 4th photo we've seen of the guy. And I feel like he just has different eyebrows every time.
In the other set of photos that police have released over the past few days. These photos, though, released after police found that backpack near Central Park's boat pond during their search for the murder weapon and the bike. Neither of those turned up, but sources say the bag had a Tommy Hilfiger jacket inside, along with Monopoly money. It's now being processed at a forensic lab.
I saw someone say this is like finding out about Robin Hood in the 1300s. Like, every new update that comes from this guy, I'm like, that's so sick. Now, I don't even know if the Monopoly money is real. Like, I don't know if it's like someone else dropped the bag just as a joke, or if it was the shooter himself who actually planned it like this. But, like, why is he so whimsical? Why is the shooter also living a life of you know, mystery and whimsy? Why is he doing these little bits? It is so hard for me to consistently keep condemning this guy, you know? And as you guys know, I condemn. You know this. I am a condemner, okay? But this is kind of funny. This is, I don't know what he's doing here. He's just doing Hawkeye
trying
shit.
to figure out what all of this means, but more importantly, see if there's any DNA that they can pull from there. Meanwhile, NYPD detectives were learning are in Atlanta. They're chasing down dozens of leads and tips there, and they're focusing in on the bus that the suspect reportedly took from there here to New York, arriving here 10 days before the murder on November 24th. Here's what else authorities had to say.
All evidence that's recovered is just showing how we put so much energy and attention to.
Eric Adams has a hat that says Mayor Adams on it. Why is this man still mayor? Oh my God. Thank God. The most competent cops are in charge, everybody. Yeah. They're going to find him. Any day now, they're going to find him. And then Eric Adams can retire to Golan Heights like he said he would.
To this incident, and really anytime someone is a victim of a crime, we don't want to give the impression that we are doing anything unique here. We would do it for any New Yorker, any visitor to the city.
Are we not past 48 hours? Yeah. I think this is a waste of resources. Look, as you guys know, I have long been a small government fiscal conservative. You know this. I don't think we should be misusing funds like this. The NYPD has very important missions, like playing Candy Crush at subway stations, like not investigating the hate crime murders that took place against people. These guys walked up to them and asked them if they speak English, and then they fucking killed one of them. Those are important things that the NYPD is tasked with not actually investigating. They should focus on doing that instead, rather than trying to find this guy. He's like leaving Monopoly money behind. It's just like, I feel like the statute of limitation is gone, you know? It's been 48 hours, it's been longer than 48 hours. And as a small government conservative, I believe in fiscal responsibility, and this is being fiscally irresponsible. This is why I think the New York Police Department should go back to shooting fare evaders instead, which is the fiscally responsible thing to do.
And the mayor going on to say that he felt pretty confident that authorities are, closing the net on this suspect. The FBI is assisting in this investigation along with Atlanta police. They're offering a $50,000 reward, the FBI that is, for tips leading to an arrest. Live in Washington Heights, I'm Morgan Norwood, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
We should be balancing the budget. But here is Tim Pool. Yesterday I covered Ben Shapiro trying desperately to present himself as, a guy who knows what's up, trying desperately to present himself as, or not even necessarily present himself, but like trying desperately to angle himself and prime his audience, his base of support, into developing opinions on the healthcare shooting that are, still defending the interests of CEOs and healthcare healthcare profits by claiming that it's just the left that's going crazy over this assassination. And it turns out it's not just the left that's going crazy over this assassination. This is like a relatively interesting cultural touch point that has spanned across multiple different ideologies, multiple different backgrounds, age groups, seemingly people of all different ages are demonstrating bipartisanship in these trying times. These trying times when America is far too divided, it seems like they are very united on this issue. But obviously this is not great for conservatives who want to still, no matter what you do, not get mad at rich people. You have to get mad at others for marginal, not major differences, like just tiny, minuscule, marginal, immaterial differences. Please, no matter what you do, do not recognize who the real enemies are. Do not recognize that, these guys might not be good guys. My job revolves around making sure you don't understand who the real enemies are. And Tim Pool is doing that as well. Let's take a look.
This is from Mediaite. Taylor Lorenz defends her celebration of Brian Thompson's murder, saying it's natural.
It's natural if you're a demon.
Let me read. This is Sorry. These people are mind-blowingly evil
What
and
is
stupid.
This?
Former New York Times and Washington Post journalist Taylor Lorenz defended her celebration of the assassination of Brian Thompson. On Wednesday, in the hours immediately following Thompson being shot, Lorenz expressed her dismay with health industry, saying, "And people wonder why we want these executives," if you know what I mean. I'm not going to read her full statement. She went on to share celebratory graphics that she said were being spammed in her group chats. It's a picture of a star smiling, and it says CEO.
I love when the free speech guys are like, we should find who those group chatters are and kill them. Tim, have you talked with your fans about this today? Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy because like Tim will... This story has more coverage than my health insurance. This is the same woman that literally cried on a news interview, people calling her meme on the internet. A rich elite LARPing is one of the downtrodden. Spare me. Okay, so Tim Pool's audience is still stupid, it seems. Bro, don't replace the culture war with class war by Alice Thompson. Bro, please don't worry about why you pay more in taxes than billionaires. Worry about the war on Christmas and the trans agenda. Please, bro. Stay distracted, bro. It's true. That is exactly what it is. And these guys are tasked with this. This is their job. This is their purpose. This is what they do best. Also, a hit tweet from a moot on Twitter, Tokyo Dilf, with 131,000 likes on this thing. That's what this is. And Ben Shapiro and many others are desperately trying to claw this back. They're desperately trying to recenter your attention away from hating a healthcare CEO or even exhibiting any sort of animosity towards those in positions of power. And their purpose here is to say, don't do that. Please don't do that. Please never do that. It's actually really bad if you do that. Things are really great. Okay? Things are really great. Just hate on the appropriate vectors. Hate on the powerless. Hate on your neighbors. Please.
Down, and she's like, that's just what my group chat's sharing. What group chat are you in, dude? Anyway, unsurprisingly, her
like,
joy
your
over
group
the
chat cannot be
extinguishment of
posting
life drew criticism.
Dangerous memes like
After
this.
providing some examples of others dancing on
will throw you in
Thompson's grave
jail.
while only mentioning one of her many enthusiastic posts, she addressed the backlash, saying, quote, "Naturally, the mainstream media began pearl clutching it in outrage after I posted a quote tweet about insurance companies no longer paying for certain anesthesia with the phrase, and people wonder why we want these executives, you know." And then she goes on to mention not being alive anymore. Legacy media outlets, including Fox News, pounced and wrote a slew of articles about my calls for violence. Let me be super clear. My post uses a collective we and is saying explaining the public sentiment. It is not me personally saying I want these executives dead. And I'm not going to read her quote. I am explaining that thousands of Americans, myself included, are fed up with our barbaric healthcare system and the people at the top who rake in millions while inflicting pain, suffering, and the death on millions of innocent people. So basically, she said, "Oh, I can't believe that."
Oh, yeah, the image he's talking about is so funny because it's this. Anyway, let's get back to Tim, who openly has talked about defending Daniel Penny, who killed a homeless man on a subway station. He choked him to death. Openly has shit on George Floyd, who was assassinated in broad daylight by Derek Chauvin, as multiple other officers looked on as he got choked and killed. Tim Pool has celebrated that Santa Claus looking motherfucker in Latin America that shot the climate change protesters for blocking traffic. So remember, these guys, it's not like they hate political violence. They love political violence. These are the very same people that defend Kyle Rittenhouse. They love political violence as long as it is directed at appropriate targets. Powerless people, helpless people, their ideological opponents. Okay? That's it. When it's someone with, and we've talked about social murder before, but when it's someone who's got a lot of confirmed kills under his belt and they're profiting from it, and they are seen as like a legal citizen because that kind of murder is processed and systematized. So it's normal and good, and it's done at the behest of the profit motive. When someone like that dies, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't do that.
They're mad at me. I wasn't saying I wanted it to happen. I'm saying I, as well as other people, want it to happen.
You're speaking for all of us.
Yeah, it's
not for me.
Thanks, Taylor. Definitely not for me.
Before we move on, there's one thing that I want to point out though.
I like that there's a skateboard back there, or a snowboard. It says step on Sneck and find out. Like right as these like big brolic alpha dog podcast hosts are talking about how dangerous and how scary it is that Taylor Lorenz is reporting on people celebrating the death of the CEO. You know, they're also like, yeah, we're going to do a civil war and we're going to fucking kill all of our neighbors, dude. Hell yeah, dude. I'm a big dog. That's what big dogs do. They're like, civil war now. And then like one CEO gets shot and everyone celebrates it. They're like, whoa, 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 not like that. I thought you were going to kill your neighbors. Not like actual people in power, dude. What are you, fucking crazy?
The problems that people face with our healthcare system go way beyond insurance. There's no reason for you to need to have insurance just to go see.
Damn, this motherfucker saying you got to kill more people. That's fucked up. I don't agree with that. Okay. I don't agree with that statement, sir. I do not agree. That's crazy. He said there are way more targets. I don't agree, sir. Please reconsider your position. Wow.
A regular doctor for a checkup. Most of the time, most people should be able to afford that. Like, it's not necessary. It's not necessary for things to cost as much as they do. And if it wasn't for the fact that insurance and healthcare is tied to employment, you need insurance for literally anything that you do.
Yeah, he said, don't stop at the CEO. There's no reason to stop at the CEO. He said, chill.
If all these barriers to entry didn't exist, healthcare in the U.S. would be significantly cheaper. So it's easy to point at the big company and say it's their fault, but it's not exclusively the big companies. The big government is in and of itself is directly responsible for a lot of the policies that doctors have to follow that make it necessary to have the big companies and stuff involved in everyday healthcare.
One of the problems I take with the far left.
Yeah, it's the big government getting in the way of these health insurance companies, even though the health insurance companies are the ones who are writing the legislation. Yeah, that's what we got to do. More deregulation, actually. If they were truly private, it would be even better. They could have a 7% profit margin. That would be, $40 billion instead of a meager $33 billion like United Healthcare brought in. $33 billion in pure profit this past year. $33 billion.
Left is that they implement the government regulations that create the insurance companies' mechanisms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's like, you're so right, dude. The left is always saying like, let's do more insurance. It's a famous leftist position. More private insurance, please.
The insurance companies, of course, have revolving door lobbyists who want to get jobs in the government and then get jobs to these companies. But they're
also leftists. Those are the socialists. Classic case of the socialist lobbyists at big pharma and insurance companies and the socialist CEOs. Except if they were actually socialists, you would be fucking excited at their murder. Okay, you would literally be like, "Oh, this is so sick. Let's kill more socialists, please." So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
The angry left saying more government regulations, creating the system that they then complain about and then use to justify death.
To that point, back in the 90s, IBM had 0 lobbyists, and they were proud of that. They talked about it all the time. We don't have anyone in D.C. because they did have the opinion that we don't need to go to the government until the government came after them and said, we're going to sue you as a monopoly. Right. And then they're like,
wait, so lobbying is bad? So lobbying is bad, and the government forced the IBM's hand to do the bad thing, but somehow IBM is not bad? Also, they don't deserve to be busted as a trust? What the fuck is this guy saying? I don't even believe that the IBM did not have a single lobbyist until the 90s. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. What is this? What ideological framework are these guys operating on? Just like big government equals socialism? Everything that the neoliberal capitalist Western liberal democracy does is actually at the behest of socialism secretly. Huh.
Like, well, what are we going to do if we're a successful business? We're just doing business. We make computers. It's not like people don't have the option to go somewhere else, because IBM in the 90s isn't IBM today. Bill Gates was rich, but he wasn't as powerful and rich as he is today. And so they're the only option they have.
Bill Gates? Wait, what? What is he talking?
We're a successful business. We're just doing business. We make computers. It's not like people don't have the option to go somewhere else, because IBM in the 90s isn't IBM today. Bill Gates was rich, but he wasn't as powerful and rich as he is today.
Bill Gates? Does this dumb fuck think? Does this guy? What is going on? He's right. IBM wasn't what it is today. It was the Microsoft of today, but without Apple and Microsoft existing. What? I don't understand. Bill Gates did help with IBM, but he didn't found it. Gates licensed software to IBM. Yeah, but Bill Gates is Microsoft.
And so the only option they had was to get lobbyists, to hire lobbyists, so that way the government wouldn't come after them. So
I was looking at old videos from a few years ago about United Health and their issues, and people were referring to them as like an alternate government because of how big they've become. I think that's really interesting. They have more money than JP Morgan. Like it's a huge thing.
That's true, but at the same time, I heard today that their margin is something like 2%. So granted, the dude made,
which is why it's 6, and that number, that 6% number, first of all, it shouldn't exist. Okay, it shouldn't exist, and also their profit margin is 6%. That happens to be $33 billion. Okay, that's $33 billion. So you could be like, oh, it's just like 2%. Their profit margin is like really fucking slim. Okay, first of all, one, there are a lot of expenses that they bake into that are unnecessary regardless. And two, it's still $33 billion. And not only that, but also it shouldn't exist to begin with. It should not exist. It is a shitty mediator that does not need to exist at all. They provide nothing. Their only service, executive pay is factored into this as well, for the record. But they're a shitty middleman that does not have to exist at all. And it actually ends up driving up costs and offering worse care overall.
They have AI cutting people so they can make money.
You know, the guy that I guess that got killed made like $10 million a year, and it's an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah.
But because of the margin they work on, again, 2%, like that's spending a lot of money to make the money
that big.
And for CEOs of a company,
bro, these guys are so cucked. Oh my God. 6% is great for a company that makes nothing, money from thin air. Yes, the numbers that they're working with are massive. It's like hundreds of billions of dollars, man. What the fuck are you talking about? You're talking about a company that's overall generating like $500 billion fucking dollars. Okay? What do you mean? 6% profit after executive compensation and numerous other things that they endlessly spend money on is so it's just so much money. They're trying to Trojan horse the info. Their audience is clearly hostile now, and they're trying to shift the narrative. I know that's what they've been trying to do for the past couple of days, and I think it's been unsuccessful. Yeah, it's the 4th largest company revenue in the United States of America, the wealthiest nation on earth.
that big with that much of
yeah, by the way, ironic because that's profit after executive compensation, mergers and acquisitions, mass layoffs as well, in order to keep up in order to remain profitable, I guess. But then besides that, there's also a shit ton of money baked into that. For example, for not only lawsuits, but also corporate lobbyists, which this guy seemingly doesn't like. But I guess the government forced their hand to be corporate lobbyists. Stock buybacks, that too. And even then, 6% profit margin. It's crazy.
Revenue, that's actually not, $10 million is not that exorbitant, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, if you compare it to other companies of similar size.
I mean, you're never going to tell a leftist that's
yeah, okay, dog. $10 million is not exorbitant in comparison to other healthcare CEOs. Yes, because this guy is only one part of the United Healthcare Group. Okay, yes, there are larger players here. But the notion that it's not that much is so crazy, dude. Holy shit.
broke. You're never going to tell them that, and they're going to say,
well, they
okay,
blame
yeah, you're
everybody
right.
else for their problems,
Exactly.
and this is completely unsurprising. I mean, Taylor Lorenz and her ilk are the same kind of people who basically wish death on people who didn't get vaccinated during COVID, and said that it's their fault that she's getting sick and she has to raw dog the air to this day. It is embarrassing.
You know, and it's funny that she's kind of getting the brunt of this story, but she is one of the most prominent individuals who has directly engaged in what I would call veiled terrorism.
Yeah.
I say veiled because she didn't literally say.
Taylor Lorenz reporting on people's understandable resentment towards healthcare industry practices and also CEOs is veiled terrorism. Tim Pool gets paid by the Russian government to say Ukraine is the greatest enemy on earth. Tim Pool has openly fantasized about killing his political opposition over and over again, and has had people on his own broadcast so aggressively talked about killing political opposition. Tim Pool himself talked famously about killing people for treason. You know, until Sam Cedar had a conversation with him about how what constitutes for his pay-for-play scheme with Tenet Media was also akin to treason. So maybe he no longer has that pro-death penalty position. Tim Pool famously also had to delete certain parts of his coverage because his guests were getting too crazy about all the death threats they make on his broadcast.
They go do it, but we all kind of got the gist of what.
Yes, Reuters reporting company sees revenue between $450 billion and $455 billion. Yes, that's why it's almost $500 billion in revenue.
She was saying, right?
I mean, you're dealing with if you're dealing with people that are, you know, on the edge of society, maybe they have borderline mental illness or something like that, and you're saying these things, they're gonna pick up what you're putting down.
And that's who their base is. Their base, if you look at studies of white liberals, it's something like 2/3 of them have been diagnosed with a mental illness compared.
What? What study, dude? What? Maybe there is one. I don't know. If you look at white liberals, they're all mentally ill. Not us. We're very sane and very normal, okay?
That's white liberals. Compared to white conservatives, it's something like 20 to 25%. So they literally are speaking to a collective group of mentally ill people who would be more predisposed to engaging in this kind of behavior.
Yep. They're hopped up on SSRIs, all types of good stuff.
So yeah, one of the things that really irks me about a lot of these people, well, the left in general, the organizers, the activists, the people I've met, they are not stupid people.
No.
They know how finance works. They know how much money it takes to run a business. They're intelligent. They're nihilistic. During Occupy Wall Street, they explained it outright to me. They understand everything that's going on. They just don't think anything matters. So why should they care about you or your life? This is like the Hillary Clinton mentality. I'm smart, you're dumb. I should just make you do things for me. And so it results in really stupid people not knowing how money works. And they say things like, the CEO of this major, this Fortune 500 company got paid $12 million last year, and the workers are only getting $15 an hour. And then I'm like, all right, let's stop. How many employees does that company have? And they'll be like, I don't know, 40,000. All right, let's divide 12 million by 40,000. How much money do you want to give to the employees? Now, I'm not saying it's good if CEOs are.
That's how it works, man. Thank you, Tim. Yeah. It's the liberals on the left that are stupid and don't understand how to run a business. Unlike me, if the company has any sort of financial problems, just get $1 million a week from, I don't know, a foreign adversary currently invading another country to cut out some of the silliest propaganda of all time. I don't understand. It's super simple. Yeah, seek Russian investment. Yeah.
Ripping off the company and doing bad things, selling stocks before investigations or whatever may be happening. But it's like, you're not talking about solutions. You're just saying, I'm mad. And then when we say, here's a solution, you burn the solution and say, I don't want a solution. I want to be mad.
Yeah, because the solution that they actually
It's a largely true stat about mental illness by party breakdown, but it's entirely an artifact due to the people left of center actually getting medical help. Can't be mentally ill if you never get diagnosed. I mean, yeah. Or you can't be mentally ill if you're not getting vaccinated. That's right. That's what it is.
Actually want is I want the world. I want a communist.
Yeah, dude was literally being investigated for insider trading too, for dumping stocks. But, you know, fuck it.
It's utopia.
Well, but think about what that is, right? The people who want communist utopia are not saying they want a communist utopia. They're saying, I don't want to do any work and I want to be able to live and just chill.
Yeah.
That's really what they're saying. So I had a meeting today with Ian and a couple of video producers, and we're talking about like, how do we...
Dude, why? What? God, I love hearing right-wingers talk about what like they assume leftists want. Yeah. Yeah, as opposed to, yeah, people who are on the left just want to do, I guess what CEOs do by definition, don't work a lot and just fucking print money. What do you think CEOs do, man? You think he's in the lab cooking up new ways of doing healthcare? No. He's going to the lab to be like, here, let's use some AI. Let's use some AI to streamline these denials. 90% false claim disapprovals, by the way. 90%. It's great.
How do we make movies and shows, and like, what are the cultural moves we need to make? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, these guys are motivated and want to get stuff done. You don't need communism if you're a person who just wants to do work, if you have drive and ambition, because the money comes with the ambition that you have. And it may be, maybe you're a working class guy and you're struggling to get by and it's tough, but your motivation is, I got a family and I'm gonna feed my family. I'm gonna work as hard as I have to do it. You don't need communism. You are going to do what you have to do. The communists are the people who are like, but I don't want to wake up.
Yeah, I mean,
what are we? What is, dude? You literally do the same thing I do. You have a podcast mic profession, okay? That all we do is sit on our asses and chirp for a little bit. I do it for a lot longer than he does too. I do it for 8 to 10 hours a day. He does it like what, 1 hour, a couple hours a week with his buddies. Like, what are we talking about? Oh, communists just want to sit on their asses and not work. They don't want to work. First of all, the entire principle behind socialism is specifically to, claw back more autonomy from your labor. Like, what are we talking about? The notion that the entire political movement that is designed around ownership over your own work, designed around labor in general, both historically and still in contemporary society, designed around labor, is actually about not working at all. Yeah, you only say that if you're a boss, which Tim Pool is, I guess. And even if he wasn't a boss, he's working at the behest of bosses. And that's precisely the reason why he's saying that. It's like, oh, these guys don't want to work. That's not it. They just want more meaningful pay from the work that they're putting in. They want to have a say in the process. They have a say in the creation, and they want to have a say in the process for that reason, which is perfectly valid. Oh my God. Red Scare propaganda is so effective in this country. It's so goddamn effective that you have a century worth of material, art, propaganda, agitated propaganda that exclusively centers itself around work. You have so much academic research and literature dedicated specifically to improving the relations that workers have with the means of production. And all of that is nothing in the mind of dumbass Americans who are just like, yeah, socialism was when you don't want to work no more. That's it. That's it. Communism is when the government makes you work hard, and that's bad. But also simultaneously, communists don't want to work at all, but then the government comes in and makes you work by force, as opposed to capitalism where that doesn't happen. Yeah, the symbol is literally tools, but it doesn't matter.
Like, not for nothing, but like I was doing exactly what I do here on Twitter for like 12 years, 13 years before I came and joined.
What do you do, my man? What do the elevated self-importance of these fucking idiots is also always fascinating to watch. Bro, you don't do shit. I mean, at least I recognize I don't do shit. right? These guys, on the other hand, they literally are just like, this is what I've been doing for 12 years. I've been posting on Twitter for 12 years. It's like, oh, sick, man. Such useful labor.
Join the crew here, doing exactly the same thing. And even if I wasn't here, every night of the week, I would still be doing this on Twitter because that's what I did before. It's just this is recreation to me.
And their idea of getting paid not to work would actually make their mental health issues worse. I mean, I think there's inherent value in work and toil and in being productive. And the idea that you would sit around all day doing literally nothing, like the idea that would give more purpose to your life or make you better off is so backwards.
That's why isolation was so destructive during lockdowns.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. But this is the crazy thing, that for whatever reason, the liberal worldview is work equals bad.
Right.
And I'm like, work is life.
He's like, work sets you free. Everybody knows that. Even in the traditional German. Work equals life. It's the best. Which is why this thing that comprises most of your adult life should be awful, grueling. You shouldn't see any of the benefits of the work that you put in. The CEO, on the other hand, he should receive all the benefits. And more importantly than the CEO, you know who should receive all the benefits? People that simply had more money than you did at a time so they could have ownership over your work. The shareholders. That's who gets to see your profits, your surplus labor value extracted from you. People who have never touched the factory floor or the assembly line. People who you will never meet. This is a wonderful and fantastic structure. I like it a lot. It's really beneficial.
And it's weird that we develop this culture where they're like, whoa, man, your work is your life. What's wrong with you, dude? And I'm like, a guy 300 years ago who grew up with his dad, who was a blacksmith, was not upset that someone came to him and said, I need a new sword. And he was like, I know how to make them. Check it out. And then makes it. And they're like, this is the finest sword I've ever seen. It's like, thank you, sir. It made you feel good, made you feel a part of society. You were useful. And for some reason, over the past several decades, we've developed this like drugged out hippie mentality of like, life should be just like laying around.
Who are they talking about? Also, he is describing alienation. 300 years ago, when someone was a tool maker, they directly touched the tool. And the tool maker had ownership over its own tools to make other tools. It seems automation. It seems as the productive forces. It seems that the productive forces got a little too good. And it made it so that the blacksmith can no longer even own his own tools or even the tools that he makes. Yeah. He's great. He's talking, he's talking alienation.
Down and looking at the sky.
Yep.
And what?
Well, they'll be in the fields when they get their utopia of communism.
Oh, they don't get it.
Yeah.
3-Body Problem. Have you guys seen it?
Mm-mm.
It went viral a while ago because it's a Netflix show and it opened with the Cultural Revolution in China.
Bro, that shit sucked. The only part of it, the only part that was cool was the Cultural Revolution stuff. I'm not gonna lie, the 3-Body Problem, the Netflix adaptation was like kind of ass. Everyone says the book is really good. I never read it. I don't read anti-Maoist. I don't read anti-Maoist drivel, but I didn't really like the Netflix show that much.
And it's epic. And because it's so old, I'm going to spoil a bit of it. But you've got this Red Guard woman beating a guy, a professor, for refusing to give him the answers they want on stage. He's got a dunce cap on. Mm-hmm. Later on, this woman has her hand has been amputated and she's breaking rocks in a field. These lefty communists don't realize. Let me ask you. You don't want to work.
Wait, what? Where are you going? These lefty communists want to do cultural revolution? Is that what he's saying? Or is he saying that oh my God. Remember earlier when I memed that these guys love saying like lefty communists don't want to work, but then in real existing communism, they get forced into the salt mines. He's literally doing that. His argument, I think, is unironically going to be leftist communists don't even know what they want. If they knew what they wanted, they would understand that inevitably you're going to have to work in the salt mines by force.
Work? What skills do you have? What passions drive you? Nothing? Okay, break rocks. Because the dude who knows how to program computers, the communists are going to be like, okay, program computers. And then you say, but I just want to like read and do poetry. Break rocks, and they're going to put you in a quarry. Yep. They're going to say, do the labor you can do, because to each according to their needs, from each according to what is it? From each according to their means.
Their ability to each according.
Yeah,
to
there
their
you go.
needs.
And that means what?
Please go ahead. Explain to me why that's bad. I was like, I want to know what he means.
What are you
why
good
this
at?
is
And
a
what
bad
can you
thing.
do? Okay, well, we'll give you a little bit of food, and the only thing you're capable of doing for the system is going to be menial labor. Yep. Congratulations, you've got everything you've ever wanted.
It's interesting that they don't teach the Cultural Revolution in a lot of colleges or schools. Like, you grow up, a lot of people don't just know about what happened with Mao. They don't know what happened with Stalin.
Wait, first of all, they don't teach a lot of shit in American schools. I don't know if they don't teach Cultural Revolution, which is weird because they do in China. Like, I think the official Chinese position is that, yes, there were a lot of mistakes. Like, so I don't know who he's talking about. And I assume they teach it in American education too. But yeah, he's like, why would Tim Pool know what they teach in American schools? He dropped out of like 6th grade. Oh, I don't think Tim knows. Tim, see yourself out of this conversation, bud. Yeah, he did. He dropped out of 5th grade, right?
Oh, for sure it's intentional, because they want to implement it. And if you know the consequences, you might be afraid to go down that utopian route, you know?
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip.
Nice, man. Thank you. That was sick. But anyway, on that note, I got a lot of stuff lined up for this week, chat. And I got to end the broadcast here. We did 8 hours. Okay. It was a fantastic day where we covered so much. As you guys know, Erdogan is on top. He is the table. But we'll figure it out. Love you all. Peace.